Yeah, I hate doing vocal warm-ups, but, you know, it's part of the job. Hi, Helluva Boss. That's a show. I've watched the first season of it. That's a thing I did on this channel. And, what the fuck happened in the first episode? I can't remember anymore. So let's do a recap. Let's do a little refresh, a recap, a look back at the show that was, to remember what happened with it, why it was the way that it was, and try and pull together some thoughts on like the quality and the scope and the scale of the show, and what it's like, and how cool it is, and what is wrong with it, also, maybe in some cases. And we'll do this using basically the same format that I did with the tier list for the Has-Been Hotel songs, which is to say we're going to do a tier list. So self-explanatory there. And the tier list is not about, do I think objectively this thing is good or bad, right? Like, this is like, because I really don't have the authority to say that. I'm going to make my arguments. I'm going to give you my reasoning. But the tier list is episodes that like genuinely astonished me go up here where I'm like, holy fuck, like how the fuck did this happen? How, like, where I'm jaw on the floor, I'm like genuinely kind of stunned by what I'm seeing. There's a couple of those. A very good time, which is just, this is fun. I had a good time with it. It's all right, which is like, yeah, all right. Like, I don't really, like, I have no strong feelings on it. And then I won't miss it, which is like, I'm probably not going to rewatch that episode if I don't have to, right? It's like, that doesn't matter. We can leave it out. It's like, who cares? That's where it is. And it is personal, obviously, but I'm going to make some hopefully informed arguments about why I feel the way that I do about each of the things. Because Helluva Boss, one of the things that has made the show fascinating for me is to see it congeal into a very different form by the end than where it started. Like, it started in one very particular place and then very rapidly in some ways metamorphosed into something entirely different. And like, not in the sense of like, oh, the show is not what I've like, not in a negative sense, but in the sense of like, this show seemed to find its voice and figure out what it wanted to be about. From my perspective, very rapidly, right? Because I watched all of the episodes like back to back from people who were following the show as it was being developed. Presumably this change has been like a lot more gradual for you guys. And certainly I can't help but see it in the context of Has-Been Hotel, which my understanding being that Helluva Boss was started in part because Vivsy Pop wanted to give her team of animators something to do while Has-Been Hotel was being like fully developed into the thing that it is, right? And so there is this, it feels like there's this parallel development as the things they learned from developing Has-Been Hotel and like creating the sensibilities and the aesthetic and the way that show is put together seems to bleed into Helluva Boss as well. Like, mostly as a way of like the writers and the animators refining their voice, refining their expression, like what it is it means for them to make this show and what the mythology and what the characters mean there. And that has made the show really interesting to engage with. Like, it's been very fascinating as like a creative process to look at how the show starts and how it comes to be eventually. And we might as well start with the pilot, which goes pretty comfortably in the I won't miss it category. And we talked about this back when I first watched the pilot, right? Like, that I understand why some people were warning me away from it, because it's not, I don't think it's very good when graded on the scale of like Has-Been Hotel and what the rest of the Helluva Boss show eventually became. Like, on that scale, it's not very good. But I do also feel it's something that should be taken within its own context, right? This is something we talked about when I watched the pilot, is the pilot to me has a lot of the energy of like mid 2010s, maybe 2000, like maybe late 2000s Newgrounds cartoon, right? Like, except with substantially higher production value. This is something that the show has had like from the start, is there's animation and background design that substantially punches above where you would think the weight of the show is, right? And that like, that's genuinely always impressive. Like, the character animation on the characters in the pilot has been quite impressive from the start, especially from the perspective of being this is independent web animation, right? That being said, the pilot is not great. Like, it's the kind of thing that if I had discovered it when I was 14, 15, 16, like in high school, watching it during class on my laptop when I was supposed to be paying attention, I would have fucking loved the shit out of this. Like, this would have been exactly my kind of thing. Because, like, in many ways, it's kind of ADHD friendly because it just kind of jumps from idea to idea and fucks around. Sort of more intent on delivering a series of gags than on delivering any kind of cohesive narrative. And that was quite common. Like, that was a very normal form that web animation took back in the day. I commented on how, like, a lot of the visual style, a lot of the aesthetic of this seems to be placed, like, squarely in, like, the Ed's World, and, like, Turbo Punch mold of web animation, like down to the character design, down to like the style of the gags that are being put together. It seems from that same like aesthetic and comedy tradition, right? Where an overarching plot or like a clear progression of how the characters relate to one another is entirely secondary to getting to the next gag. Right? And so the gags are all the fuck over the place, right? Like, because we have, like, cutaway gags that are like, hey, remember that time that you were shitty? And then we cut away to, like, that time that someone was shitty, and then we cut back because that's the joke. But then occasionally also, we get a cutaway gag to, like, oh, here's horny Stolas, like, in this scene with these gorgeously rendered backgrounds and, like, this very... Like, all of a sudden, the character animation drops from being, this is comedies, like, people flying all over the place, exaggerated expressions, to, well, here's this subtle lounging gentleman who is just hanging out in his parlor, whispering sweet nothings to his lover, into, like, where, like, the cutaway gags change shape and style, depending on whatever the fuck whoever wrote them happens to be into at the moment, right? I still love Stolas' animation in this scene, actually. It's still very good.
Well, yes, but more people die if nothing is done about it. And it gets lonely here.
Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense.
You know what happens when I'm lonely, Blitzy?
Oh, God fucking damn it.
When I'm lonely, I become hungry. And when I become hungry, I want to choke on that red of yours. Your sad and lick all...
Right. It's very good character animation still. But there isn't much here, right? Like, it's a series of gags with cutaway gags that cut away to other gags, that goes nowhere and ends up doing nothing, and, like, finishes up on, like, just this shitty kid being like, you're all terrible people, which is like, yeah, no, we've been, you don't have to, like, point that out, kid. We've been watching the same thing. But that's to set up the final joke where it's like, oh, hey, we get to murder the kid because, haha, child murder. And then we cut him up and shove it in a bag, and then we, like, everyone hugs. And haha, it's a funny gag. Mom sucks at drawing own kid. Ha 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 ha. Right. It doesn't go anywhere, right? Like, there's no progression, there's no anything happening. But this is sort of where the show starts, right? Like, where the title of the show, Helluva Boss, seems to refer to Blitz being a hell of a boss to work for, and then the concept here is essentially it's office comedy with, like, a really edgy tone at a murder company. Ha ha ha, edgy. And the primary focus is going to be how his employees and like how Luna and Millie and Moxie navigate working for this weirdo. Who's constantly acting out, right? And to that end, all of the characters are very one note, right? Like, Blitz is the weirdo, right? He's the weird, unreasonable, chaos freak, weird guy who wants weird things and says weird things and insists on doing weird things, and he has the thing about horses, and, like, he's the one who spent a bunch of money on the ad. And he's, like, giving corporate spiel nonsense in front of a shitty blackboard. And then Moxie is the straight man. He's the one who's like, actually, sir, actually, according to my calculations, you're a terrible boss, actually. Like, he's the nerd. He's the foil to Blitz's comedy nonsense. And then Moxie is the girl. Basically, Moxie doesn't have that much of a personality in the pilot, and she kind of still doesn't in a bunch of the show. We'll talk about that as we go along. Which is, on the one hand, I don't mind that Moxie doesn't have as much personality as the others. It does make her like a part of a dynamic. But yeah. And like Moxie is the girl. She's like sort of enthusiastic and happy and cheerful and very supportive of her loving husband. And then Luna is the teenager, right? Like the one who rolls her eyes and goes, "Oh, stupid dad, I don't want to be here. I have better things to do. I want to go to my room and write poetry." Like she's occupying that role. Like where Moxie is the one who's frustrated and annoyed with Blitz, Millie is the one who's enthusiastic and goes along with everything because she's very supportive and cheerful and happy. And then Luna is the eye-rolling, like, "Oh my god, he's so lame." With anger issues and so on, right? And they're all there as characters who are designed to react against Blitz and his shenanigans, and that sort of seems to be, at least with the pilot, that's the setup for the show, right? Like, this is a series of office comedies where it's like, oh, the characters bounce off of whatever crazy scheme Blitz has cooked up this week. And that's not where the show goes at all, to the point where I sort of feel like the title of the show is a little bit like, what the fuck does that refer to anymore? Like, what does that even mean? I guess kind of that Stolas is Blitz's boss. Like, is it, if the Stolas and Blitz relationship becomes central, I guess that's where it is. But all of this initial setup of like, oh, these are imps who work at a corporation in hell and they need to do business, but the business is murder because hell is evil. Like, that has all sort of like slowly drained out of the show, at least by the end of season 1. I don't know if it comes back in season 2, but we're only talking about season 1 here. In favor of becoming, like, as I noted at the end of episode 7, like a soap opera. It ends up a soap opera, but it begins as a Newgrounds comedy. Well, not just Newgrounds, actually. That's the thing, is like, I identified a lot with Newgrounds because, like, that's my grounding in this kind of humor, but honestly, there's a lot of Family Guy in there, too. And I don't say that in a derogatory way. Like, there's a lot about Family Guy to shit on. Oh, boy, holy shit, there's so much. But that's partly because the show has been running for like 20 fucking years. It's been all over everything. It has done every conceivable kind of gag. And it has been part of sort of the fabric of American comedy for that long. And its influence, much in the way that the influence of The Simpsons is everywhere, is at this point sort of everywhere. Either in shows emulating sort of some of the style of Family Guy, which I think the Helluva Boss pilot does, especially with its cutaway gags, or in reacting against it and trying to get away from it as a style of comedy. I still really like this illustration. It's quite nice. There is a bunch of Family Guy in here, like especially in the cutaway gags, and the way that the cutaway gags are mostly siloed off in a disconnected universe from the main plot of the action. And also in the sense that there isn't really a main plot. Like, there isn't really one. Nothing really happens in the show, right? Like, it's a series of gags held together with the tiniest little bit of duct tape so that we can get to the end. But what I find interesting about the end is that we basically get the scene at Mammon's here, right? Or not at the other guy. The horny guy, the cock rooster fuck guy. I did not identify him as... We'll talk about that once we get there. What I find interesting is this ending scene, right? Like, with Moxie serenading Millie over, like, a bottle of wine and 2 glasses in, like, this very sweet... musical kind of way, where, like, we see, for example, first of all, the fact that part of what these two characters, like, what they share, what they love about each other, is their mutual capacity for and love of murderous violence. This is going to come up later. I really like that as a feature of their relationship, is that, yeah, Moxie is this little, like, pushes glasses up nose, theater kid nerd boy, but also proficient sniper. He can murder people, and he gets off on it, and he gets off on seeing Millie murder people, right? They get off on the violence and the thrill of it all. And that's the thing I like about Millie, like, as a personality. Like, something that becomes more clear as the show goes on is that Millie's part of the reason why Millie is seems to be so personality-less relative to the other characters is partly because she's fulfilled. She's happy, right? And when you're happy, it's like, well, I mean, how much of a character arc do you need then? Whereas all the characters who are neurotic and like miserable and unhappy, like Luna and Blitz and Stolas and indeed Moxie, they can have character arcs and more interesting things happen to them because they're kind of fucked up and neurotic. That's the thing. Like that's the thing I forgive about Millie. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it once we get to episode 5. Remind me once we get to episode 5. You can't remind me of anything. I'm going to upload this video and I'm not going to see your comments before I get to episode 5. But you know what I mean. But like this little musical number of like this very sweet little musical number of like, oh, Millie, I love you. That to me does presage where the show ends up going, right? Like the sort of sweet comedy soap opera it eventually ends up becoming. I feel like it's sort of presaged in the ending of the pilot. But that's the pilot. Like I want to emphasize that like, you can take it on its own terms, right? Like, you can understand the context that it's supposed to exist within and the influences that it draws from, and you can kind of understand, okay, that's why it is the way that it is. It's because that's what they thought the show was when they started making it. And if I had been the age group that was more the target for it, I would definitely have been into it. But as it stands, I'm not. And it's not really my style of thing anymore, and I'm not gonna make a point of rewatching the pilot if I rewatch the show. I don't really care. Like, it's fine if it feels like the sketch, right? Like, it feels like the very first sort of, I wrote everything down in a document about, like, just threw everything at the wall, and then the stuff that eventually sort of stuck to the wall when all of the shitty bits had dripped off, that eventually becomes the rest of the show. But this, I'm not gonna miss it. So, now we get to the pilot, or not the pilot, the first episode, right? Which represents like a real sea change from where the pilot was. In the sense of like, if the pilot was the sketch, right? Like the pilot is we've thrown everything at the wall. We've sort of sketched out these characters. We've sketched out this setting, more or less. Now the first episode is the one where we actually seem to start to go, okay, so what do we do with this then, right? Like, what's the stuff that's stuck to the wall? What's slid off? And it's still holding on to a number of pieces of the pilot, in the sense that it's still holding on to the idea that this is like an episodic office comedy thing, where, okay, each week, the crew at Imp are going to have a target from someone that they need to kill, and then we're going to have a story about like, oh, why do they want why do they want them dead? Like, why do the people want to have someone at Imp murder someone who's back in the real world? And we sort of talk about that, and we show that, and then like Blitz and his weirdness and Millie and Moxie and Looney sort of bouncing off of that can all happen around that. Like, the show seems to have realized we need a central thread, right? Like, we need a central structure around which we can spin our many weird and crazy gags, right? And so it holds on to a bunch of the stuff from the pilot that will fall away. Like, the sort of episodic office comedy thing is gone by now, by where I am in the show. But it holds on to like a lot of those elements to start with. And also has developed a much more compelling use of its aesthetic, a much more compelling use of like a much more thought through, I think, use of its world aesthetic. Because in the pilot, the human world and hell were not particularly clearly distinguished, right? This is the human world, and then this is hell. And like, you look at the color palette, and it's like, these are different places. I mean, I guess that's hell out there. Which, you know, I would say, like, which isn't really particularly clear, right? So in hell, it's because it's hell, chairs, spikes, and they have spikes on the spikes, and there's spikes on the things, and it's because hell, it's evil, and horns and things, right? Like, and then we see this, which is like, very different vision of hell outside, but like where hell is just like, oh yeah, that's just what hell looks like, whatever. And then the human world is not markedly visually that different from it. The contrast with that is, as we open the first episode, clearly some more thought has gone into this, because we open at the puppies junior school where learning is fun, and like the fucking what is it behind the kids here? The word of the day is harmony, and we have this like mid 2000s Cartoon Network Nickelodeon aesthetic in the character design, where everything is sickly sweet and beautiful and pretty and everyone's happy and it's idyllic. And also this takes place in suburbia, right? Like this takes place in a place where there's grass on the ground and there's trees and like, yeah, sure, people have cars, but it's not overwhelmed with like roads or anything. And like when the teacher drives off to go murder her husband, right, we see what the environment of the place is like, right? This is outside, this is grassy, this is alive, this is and then after the children have been appropriately traumatized, then we go to hell, and now the aesthetic has a purpose, right? Now it's like, oh, I get it. It's because of then hell is the place where all the buildings have devil horns on them, and it's inner city, and it's blighted, and it's urban, and it's like. And all the colors are muted and like, and the things are spikes on, specifically as a point of contrast to the way that the human world looks, right? Bit crush. And so it's being used with a specific intentionality here, right? Hell looks like this because there's a good reason for it, because it's being used to contrast against the human world. And this is something that, I mean, we'll talk about that as we go on. Hell becomes more and more colorful, is one thing I noticed as the show goes on. But here to start with, it's like hell is this gray, drab, kind of miserable, shabby place where everything's a little bit dirty and everything's a little bit shitty and everything's a little bit, as a contrast to the human world where everything is so nice and sweet. And it's like, oh my God, it's like idyllic and stuff. And the skies are blue and there's birds and like everything is clean and it's like clean, modern, glassy lines and all the characters are like sort of happy and sweet and have like cashiers talk to the children. And people fuck in their murder house. Also that. So there's a clear intentionality here, right? Like, there's more thought that has gone into delineating human character designs from demons. There's more thought that has gone into delineating hell from the real world. And there is a story arc, right? Like, there is a thing of, like, Moxie having trouble sort of feeling okay murdering people just willy-nilly, that ties into an actual, point, like a theme that is present in the show, which is this thing of, like, basically judging things by their appearance, right? Because by appearance, these are hell demons from hell who are murderers who kill people, and they're shitty and fucking, right? Like, they're the evil bad guys, theoretically, right? And in theory, this is an idyllic, like, all-American family home out in the, like, the middle of the, like, the nice rural suburbia with, like, the sunset and the nature and, like, George Washington acts and, like, homestead and living a free life. And they're all super happy, and they're, like, classic American family with, like, a mom and dad and 2 kids and the ashes of grandpa at the table. And, like, he's an all-American fellow with, like, a Elvis Pompadour and like that sort of classic American 1950s dad face where the eye is almost never open. And sort of the theme here is like, oh, right, like this is actually covering up for a deep sickness, right? Which is something that sort of comes through in Has Been Hotel as well. This thing of like the things that look good, the things that are slathered in the aesthetics of goodness often aren't, right? Like, are often, in fact, quite bad and evil and hide something horrible and diseased inside. That's what happens with heaven in Has Been Hotel, right? Like, what heaven is shown to be a structure of, like, completely irrational, weird-ass motherfucking hypocrisy that, like, condemns millions of souls to erasure simply because they can't be bothered to try and figure out how they might be saved, right? But heaven is like, welcome to heaven. Oh, where the virtuous reside, everyone is hot. Right? Where heaven has this shallow, beautiful aesthetic. And again, hell is identified with urban blight and inner city decay and like problematic, gruesome, sinful humanity and all of that. Where perfection itself, like the concept of perfection, the concept of perfect goodness, the concept of living up to all of these conformist ideals. The kid even has a fucking coonskin cap on, like, oh my God. This is evil, right? Like, in the language of the show, this becomes identified much more with evil than the aesthetics of hell, right? So there's a thought given to the way that the show uses it. By the way, I don't understand how I didn't catch the fucking bone mirror and the head on the wall and the guns and like all the sort of interior decorating of the house. That's a fucking human skin lamp with like a spine for a thing. I don't know how the fuck I didn't catch that the first time I saw it. Like all the indicators that are there that, oh, that's a lot of weapons and the knife in the kitchen and the but somehow I fucking didn't. But the point still remains, right? Like that whereas the evil hell imps who murder people, right? And like this fucking freak Blitz and this little neurotic weirdo Moxie and all of that, they're actually good, right? Like they are good because they are a family who cares for each other, who like each other, who love each other, who protect each other, who help each other, which is sort of part of the point. Is like Moxie with his insecurity and his inability to do his job correctly. Nonetheless, there's still this thing of like helping each other, achieving the goal in the end, sticking together through thick and thin. And look how they love each other, and like everyone's a family and everyone's together. That's another thing that sort of stays from the pilot a little bit. The pilot also ends with everyone sort of having a hug and sort of reaffirming their family bond in the aftermath of a crisis, right? But now there's a story arc. Like now Moxie has an arc that he needs to go through to learn something, to sort of grow as a person a little bit, and all of the gags can sort of function around that as a central part of the puzzle. And we end on a scene of everyone laughing, right? Like it's much now. It has a format. Now it has a structure, right? Like now it sort of seems to know, okay, this is a shape that the show can be in, and that we can go on with. The show doesn't do that. Like we'll talk about that as we go along. But it's like, okay, now here we have like a solid 13 and a half minutes of television, right? Like now here we have a solid 13 and a half minutes of an episode of a show that seems to have something on its mind. Like it has some thoughts about what it thinks and it feels, that has like an aesthetic point to make, and that has a clearer idea of who these characters are and how they bounce off of each other and what they mean to one another. And why we should be invested in them as characters rather than being invested in them as just, you know, these are funny gag, haha, deliverers who exist to, you know, do the funny for us and engage in shenanigans. So it's like, as a piece of media, it is much more solid, well composed, and put together than the pilot is. It's still just all right in the grand scheme of things, but I like it. Like this was the one where I sort of went, oh, okay, right, cool. Whew. Like that's where I breathed a sigh of relief, and I was like, okay, so like the show has more on its mind than just edgy gags, with murder and blood and shit, right? That was sort of where I breathed a sigh of relief and felt, okay, this is probably something that's worth watching. So, Episode 2. If episode 1 is the one where I sort of was relieved and I went, okay, shit, like this is not just a series of bad gags strung together with spit and duct tape. This is like, they can tell a story, they can have like some kind of character consistency that like matters, and like they can hold a thought for more than 5 seconds at a time. Okay, cool. Like where I sort of was relieved that there was an actual show here to watch. Episode 2 is the one where I was like the first time that the show kind of knocked my socks off a little bit, where I kind of went, wait, what? How the fuck did you do that? Like, where the fuck did that come from? Like, what do you mean? Right? Like that was the first time that the show really took my feet out from under me. And it took its feet out from under me. Well, you know this if you watch my reactions, but it's the fucking lullaby scene. Because like episode 1, like, haha, funny imps go kill the like fake idyllic American family murder cannibals in the woods with the, yeah, like, okay, yeah, cool. And then episode 2, oh, a traumatized child senses the unhappiness in her parents' marriage and wakes up with a nightmare that she's not able to find anyone, that she's all alone in the world. And then her dad sings her a lullaby about the fucking world ending. Okay. Yeah, sure. We can do that. That makes sense. Why not? Like, it's like where I kind of, what the fuck? Like, what is I was genuinely kind of like, what the fuck is happening here? Is that the same show anymore? Or, clearly it is, because it's the same characters, but like, I really did feel like a sense of like, what? Huh? That's not what I was expecting. That's not what's supposed to be happening here. And it's like tonal whiplash is very much a feature of Helluva Boss season 1, right? Like where the tone is like, it's just whatever the fuck it feels like being, right? Like that's a difference with Has Been Hotel. Like Has Been Hotel has a very consistent tone. Like it has a very consistent approach to its storytelling and its world building and to like the narrative of each episode, with like a strong central thread that runs through it all. That's one of the praises I have for that show. It doesn't have time enough, as I've lamented many, many times, to really capitalize on it, like to really sort of to cash in all the chips that it gets from that. But Helluva Boss doesn't have that, right? Like Helluva Boss does not have that consistency at all. And sometimes that's a feature. Right? Sometimes that's a strength of the show, actually, is that it can go to all these different places just because it fucking wants to, right? And then sometimes it gives me pause. Sometimes it bothers me a little bit. But let's just, fuck it, let's just start with the fucking lullaby.
I am, you must remember, no matter what happens to me, I will never be far away from my special little starfire. It always seems more quiet in the dark. It always feels so stark. How silence grows under the moon. Constellations gone so soon.
Another thing, like, because Has Been Hotel, like, I started with Has Been Hotel, so that biases a lot of my feelings and thinking about Helluva Boss, inevitably. Like, that's just, I'm a human being, that's the way it goes. But Has Been Hotel is a musical, right? Like, it's a musical animated show, and that's a marriage made in heaven, if you'll excuse the pun, because, especially, it's a Broadway musical specifically, and Broadway musicals are just natural marriages with animation. Because this is the thing we talked about, right? Like the way that musicals tend to work is when dialogue is no longer enough to express your feelings, you sing, and when singing is no longer enough, you dance, right? Like that's sort of the progression that often happens in musicals. And animation is almost custom built to meet a musical where it is emotionally. Think of something like Just Can't Wait to Be King. Think of Friend Like Me from Aladdin. Think of like fucking any of the song. Like think of Hellfire from Hunchback of Notre Dame. Right, the freedom that animation has on a aesthetic level, the freedom it has to create scenarios and create imagery in a way that you just kind of can't fucking do in live action, is a beautiful natural marriage with the style and the expressiveness of like the Broadway musical tradition, right? Frollo is so consumed by his religious guilt and his self-hatred and like his shame and his cruelty and his desire that he manifests these red-robed figures that sort of look down upon him and judge him, and like he feels himself being scorched by the literal fire of desire as he thinks about Esmeralda, who has like consumed his obsession. Like, animation does that so fucking well. When the genie is promising Aladdin, like, he can have any kingdom on earth that he wants, any amount of riches, anything he possibly wants, animation is almost custom built to meet that fantastical imagery where it is in the music. What's interesting to me about the lullaby is that is not a fucking Broadway musical song, right? Like, unlike like stuff like Has Been Hotel, this is, we have like a guitar, we have some synths, and a little bit of stuff happening in the background, and like a low voice singing, like, in a demon, it always seems so in the dark. Like, that's all the way down here, very chill, relax. Like, that's not at all a Broadway musical style, and yet the way that the animation chooses to meet it, I think, is genuinely, like, okay, let's watch some more.
I used to think that I was bold. I used to think love would be fun. Now all my stories have...
Because, like, Stolas is not just singing a lullaby to his daughter here, right? Like, he's also singing about himself. I used to think that I was bold. I used to think love would be fun. Now all my stories have been told except for one, right? This thing of like, yeah, no, my marriage fucking sucks, actually, and I am feeling alone and miserable in it, and I'm not having any fun. But you, right? Like, but you are the thing that, like, still matters to him deeply as his relationship with his daughter, right? Like, and his daughter as a person. So he's singing about himself as well. So again, the imagery here, like, him walking with her in his arms through this, like, blighted desert of the universe, right? Like, this profound loneliness that is in the imagery, right? Like, this shot here, that's a fucking lonely ass shot. And many of the shots in this song are quite lonely like that, like him walking alone through the sands, like holding her. The animation meets this song so beautifully at the emotional space where it is.
Think love would be fun. Now all my stories have been told, except for one. As the stars start to align, I hope you take it as a sign that you'll be okay.
Like this too, the loneliness that's in there, right? This us two alone against a world that is falling apart and crumbling before us. Which, like, yeah, that's a metaphor for your marriage right fucking there, my guy. Jesus. It's like, it genuinely knocked my socks off a little bit, because, like, this is not some shit that Disney would do, right? Everything that happens in Has Been Hotel, except for the swearing and the fucking, like, it's very much grounded in, this is the sort of thing that Disney would, like, even stuff like Hell's Greatest Dad, like, very explicitly references, like, the Aladdin Genie Friend Like Me music, right? Like, in terms of the way that it presents its visuals. This feels much more, it's ambitious. Like, it feels very much of its own thing.
Everything will be okay. And if the seven rings collapse, although the day could be our last, you will be okay.
I should also mention, just the fucking animation here is gorgeous. The animation work on all this, I think I talked about that when I did the reaction, but, like, it's genuine. Like, there's some real Mobius-like qualities, like some Lean Claire style to the way that the space environments are rendered. And also, like, again, like, the song and the animation meeting each other, like, when the seven rings collapse and, like, the planet starts to come apart, take it as a sign that you'll be okay. So the planet comes apart beneath them, and they just float up to safety on this little rock. Like, she's still being held in the bonds of her father's love, even as these badass motherfucking anime light beams start shooting out.
When I'm gone, you'll be okay. And when creation goes to die, you can find me in the sky.
What a fucking shot also, by the way. Like, because the song has two high notes, right? Creation goes to die, you can find me in the sky. Like, it has these two high notes. How does it punctuate them? Fucking having the galaxy, like, having a solar system explode by literally showing the end of the world.
You can find me in the sky.
Like, it's genuinely a really, really good fucking piece of musical animation. in a style that's so different from how they do it in Has Been Hotel. And like, yeah, like took my legs out from under me. It really did the first time I saw it.
Upon the last day, and you will be okay.
Like, why am I getting emails? Okay, not important emails, thankfully. Took my legs out from under me. But also, we were doing Murder Cannibals like 5 minutes ago. It was like, some are cannibal who has a southern accent, worship Satan, and I'm here with my idyllic fucking, like, where the fuck did that go? What is this show? Where did we come from? Tonal whiplash, right? But it is in the service of something. It is in the service of the thing that was like the first episode did. The first episode demonstrated, okay, we know we need to have some kind of plot to connect the gags that we want to do, right? Like, we need to have some kind of plot that the characters can, like, react against and be crazy about. So, first episode is like, random lady tells Blitz, hey, go kill my fucking shithead of a husband and like, his like, bitch girlfriend, right? And their kids. And then they take the job, and then, like, but they, like, Blitz and Moxie and Millie don't have any personal connection to it, right? Like, they don't have any personal investment in what's going on. They don't know this woman. They're just doing their job, right? They're just doing the thing. Episode 2 then goes, okay, beyond just having a plot that provides a through line for the thing that's happening, let's also have, like, an emotional thematic core that is, like, the central jeopardy of the show, like, is like this central emotional core of the of the episode that runs through, and then have the characters do their silly bits around that. And that would be the relationship between Stolas and Octavia, right? Like, that's the central emotional core of the show, of their broken relationship, and indeed Stolas' broken marriage. That, like, sort of forms, like, this estrangement between father and daughter that forms the emotional core of this particular episode. And then that emotional core is what sets the plot in motion, right? Like, in the first episode, it's just woman comes to Blitz, kill these people because of that's what he does for a business. Here, it is, okay, Stolas has an emotional need, right? Like, he needs to connect with his daughter, right? So we get this conflict between need and want, where what he wants is to connect with his daughter and get dicked down by Blitz, and he doesn't. He does a bad job of navigating his needs versus his wants, right? That's why he makes the decision, let's go to Lululand, because I remember at Lululand at once upon a time you were happy, so I'm going to recreate your happiness. And then at the same time, this is also an opportunity for me to call up my boy toy, and maybe get a good dicking at the end of the day, right? Which is one of his big mistakes, is that rather that what he needs to do is connect with his daughter, right? Like, and to connect with his daughter, he needs to ask her what the fuck she wants, rather than make decisions about what she must want or what she probably wants. I'm sure this will work. And, like, so there's, like, a classic story structure, want versus need, like an emotional conflict, and a thing that can be resolved, like, by the characters emotionally connecting with each other, rather than resolved simply through, well, they kill the cannibal family and then the story is over, right?
You slept with an imp in our fucking bed! It wasn't expected. I didn't have time to go to a motel. A motel? Like a fucking plebeian?
My world is burning down around me.
I like the symmetry also of, like, we get the song from Stolas about, like, when the entire world is being destroyed around you, then you'll be okay. And then the song that she's listening to as she wakes up as a moody teenager is like, my world is burning down around me. I see. Thematic through line, emotional through line. By the way, this is just not for nothing. This is the thing about tone, right? Is tone determines how you read the action, right? A comedic tone means that whatever action is happening in the show, you tend to read it as funny, right? Like, this is funny, we're supposed to laugh at it. We're not supposed to take it too seriously. That is why the show at multiple times is like, haha, children being murdered, that is funny, because it's a comedy show. So, like, we don't actually think the show is saying that it's funny when children get murdered. We're saying, aha, this is a transgressive joke, and it's funny because it's transgressive, haha, tone, right? The show opens with this very bittersweet lullaby between Stolas and his daughter. And then we get...
I can't believe you slept with an imp in our fucking bed! It wasn't expected. I didn't have time to go to the motel. You want to fuck this one too?
No, of course not.
You are a goddamn embarrassment. I'm not spending another moment looking at your pathetic, imp-sucking face! Fuck's sake! All your useless...
So there's a stereotype in sitcoms and stuff of, like, the wife who's angry, right? Angry wife. Where it's, women are emotional, and it's like, where the wife gets angry and she throws stuff, and that's funny because it's a comedy and it's like gender stereotypes. Yeah. That's all very funny, right? The thing about that is, this is domestic abuse that we're seeing here, actually. Like, like, boys, this is something that's kind of important to know. If you have a partner who yells and screams and throws things and destroys things around your home when they're upset about something, and who berates you and degrades you, that's not just women be like that sometimes. Hysterical girls, what are you gonna do? Roll your eyes, old ball and chain. That's abusive. That is abusive behavior. None of which is to say, like, Stella does have a legitimate reason to be upset with Stolas. He cheated on her. That's a very legitimate reason to be upset. But what she's doing is that she's smashing things, she's breaking things, she's screaming at him, throwing things at him. And he's clearly fucking scared of her. And it's like, that is abusive. That's the behavior of an abusive spouse. So tone, right? Am I supposed to read this scene as like the Stolas fucked an imp, now his wife is mad at him, she's throwing stuff around, oh, women. Is this that? Or am I supposed in this moment to understand that, holy shit, Stolas is a victim of domestic abuse, actually? And this is the one criticism I'll have of the first, one of the criticisms I have of the first season, is that it doesn't quite seem to know either. Like, I don't get a clear sense from this episode or from the first season that it's entirely committed to either interpretation of the scene. And like, I'm thinking especially of like episode 5, right? When it turns out that Stryker was hired by Stella to murder Stolas, which is like, and Stolas seems to know, it's like, okay, that, am I supposed to take that as, funny, Stolas' shitty bitch wife is hiring an assassin to kill him, and then she's screaming about it in the dinner table in front of everyone? Am I supposed to laugh at that? Am I supposed to take this as like, oh, this is transgressive, funny, comedy? Or am I supposed to understand that as like spousal abuse? And there are times when I feel like Helluva Boss doesn't quite seem to know whether it wants us to take it seriously or whether it wants us to laugh at it. And that's a little bit of a problem, because like, if Stolas is a domestic abuse victim, that changes some things about his relationship with Blitz, right? And I don't know, like, again, I don't know what happens in season 2. Maybe it comes up. Don't spoil it for me in the comments, please. But it is a thing, like, especially here in episode 2, because we have this fucking tonal whiplash from the first episode especially. How am I supposed to read this? And in consequence, how am I supposed to read Stolas' character? How am I supposed to interpret his behavior? Because when Stolas decides to take his daughter to Lululand, he's doing it because he wants to forcibly recapture a time in his life when she was happy and when he was happy, right? Like when she was a little baby and the relationship with Stella wasn't so bad. Like he still slept on one side of the bed and hogged the blanket from him, but like it wasn't any worse than that, right? And it's like, is that because he's yearning to go back to a time before his relationship with his wife completely fucking fell apart? Also, like, there's a lot of things about Stolas's behavior, especially as regards to Blitz and his relationship with him, that reads very differently if I'm supposed to take him seriously as a domestic abuse victim. Like, if the story is trying to tell me in a serious manner, no, this man is being abused by his wife. Right, it's not just a loveless marriage that Stolas steps out on sometimes. This is like... Right. And I don't feel as a viewer that the show has a consistency about how it presents that and how it integrates that into Stolas's behavior. Maybe by the end of episode 7, it's like when it sort of starts to commit more to actually exploring like the romance between Stolas and Blitz, it's maybe a little bit more clear, right? But yeah. Again, season 2 might address some of this, but season 1, this is a criticism I have of it, that's a problem for Stolas' character, is that there is this tonal whiplash inconsistency thing. That, yeah, I'm not 100% a fan of. And it's partly also because, like, in Has-Been Hotel, we saw such a clear understanding in this scene with Angel and, like, the relationship with Angel and Valentino. We saw such a clear understanding of what abuse is and how it affects people and how traumatizing and how scarring it is. Like, where that show takes, even though that also has a comedy tone, that show presents and takes its scene of domestic abuse 100 billion% seriously. Right? Like, it does not for a moment make light of any of it. Like, it is very consistent with how it manages its tone in a way that Helluva Boss Season 1 isn't. And that's partly because of the fascinating thing about Helluva Boss is watching it develop, right? Watching it find its feet, watching it discover what it wants to be and how it wants to present its characters and what tone it wants to take. Because that tonal inconsistency, sometimes it's a bonus. Sometimes it's a feature that the tone can go all the fuck over the place because that's a lot of creative freedom for the show. The show can go in a lot of different places. It can take a lot of different directions. But sometimes it's fucking not. And this episode is one of the ones where, like, I feel that there's some characterization that gets lost because of it. Because, like, it's clearly taking the rift between Stolas and Stella seriously as it pertains to Octavia, right? Like, that... From Octavia's perspective, Stolas has fucked up his marriage with her mom, and now her mom is yelling and screaming all the time. Now her parents hate each other, and it's kind of his fault because he's the one who stepped out, right? And that makes it all the more hurtful that Stolas takes his fuck toy with him to Lululand to flirt with him the whole time. Which is like, Stolas is not being a very good dad in this episode, overall. It takes it seriously on that level. Yeah, it's just been on my mind, like, that I feel there is, like some people have argued, for example, that the portrait in the background here, of the family looking all happy together is evidence that once upon a time their marriage was happy, and it's like, yeah, mate, no, I don't think so, because that's a wedding portrait, that's a piece of propaganda, ultimately. Like, this is a piece of art that is meant to project the image of a happy marriage. Like, you wouldn't have had a wedding portrait taken where you look like you hate each other, right? Like, that's where you put on your nicest face and make everything look happy. Yeah, like, Stolas and Stella's relationship is, for me, a weak point of season 1. Actually, character design. Let's talk about character design for a second, because, let's get a little bit further along. I want Octavia and her... Yeah. Can I get a full body shot of her, please? There. So Octavia dresses much more modern than her parents do. Like, especially compared to, like, Stella, who, like, prances around in this, like, big, poofy dress with like the crown and like the enormous eyelashes and like the poofy sleeves and like the princess dress, and she looks like very much like a member of the upper class nobility, right? Like she looks like a royal. She looks like royalty. And it's like a very old-fashioned style of dressing. Stola's, most of the time, does something similar. Most of the time, Stola's dresses in clothes that are a little bit upper class and stuffy. Like even here in like his bachelor bathrobe thing that he's got going on, that's a very sort of like, oh yes, I'm a member of the nobility indolently lounging about my house. Oh yes, I welcome come on. Like it has that sort of, it's based in that like quasi-Victorian Edwardian. I don't really think those periods apply very well to Helluva Boss, but like it's placed in that aesthetic space, right? Like the nobility and the upper classes and like the way that they dress, the way that they present themselves. He does put on some more embarrassing dad at a theme park clothes for their outing, but generally like, he dresses that way. Octavia, on the other hand, like with her beanie, with like her long sleeved shirt, like the boots and all of that, like she dresses in a way that's much like, I wouldn't say modern. Well, emo is coming back, so it's modern again, but in a way that's like much more sort of like modern teenager-ish, and visually, aesthetically, she's thus distancing herself from her parents. She's distancing herself from the way Stella dresses. She does have the little crown on the front of her beanie, I grant you, and she's distancing herself from like the very sort of like casual, carefree way that her dad tends to dress, and and sometimes fancy way that he tends to dress. She dresses in something that's much more dour and much more simple and much more like the universal uniform of like depressed teenagers. And that's like a really nice use of character design, which contrasts with Blitz, whose character design early on, I don't actually think is that good. Or certainly, like, I don't like it. Let's see if I can find... There must be a decent full body shot of him somewhere. It's after the commercial, right? Well, we can use this one. Blitz's character design... Okay, let's take a step back. So, I've seen a bunch of... Because I've sort of been into Helluva Boss, Has Been Hotel, like, I've been exposed to more of sort of the meme culture around the show, right? Some of like, the reactions people have to it, the things people say about it. And there's been a bunch of memes that I've seen about the character design style of Viv Medrano, right? Like, the way that she designs characters that sort of makes light of her tendencies and her fixations and the way that she designs characters, right? This is something I've talked about myself also. And like a bunch of those memes are very reductive of just sort of like, Tumblr sexy man, the suit and coat with the thing. But a thing that I think is true about Blitz is that his character design really doesn't match his character very much at all. Certainly in the way that he dresses. Fashion is self-expression. The way that characters dress expresses something about, first of all, how they relate to their bodies, like how much of it do they want to show, how much of it do they want to hide, what do they want to highlight, like what do they want to decorate. It expresses how they relate to their culture. It expresses how they relate to their peers and the people around them. It expresses like many, many things about it. Like even if you're a person who dresses like specific, like I only wear t-shirts and jeans and like I never wear anything special or particular, that says something about a person. That says something about their character, how they relate to themselves. Blitz's fashion is like, he's a demonic, like absolute chaos imp who has like all of these weird fixations, who cannot sit still for 5 seconds, who has difficulty maintaining emotional relationships, who's deeply insecure and like worried about his future. Like who's lol so random in a lot of ways, like angry, loud, comedic. I don't get any of that from the way that he's dressed in the pilot, right? Like this long coat thing with the cowboy boots, I guess, and then like these gloves whose primary function seems to be to conceal the transition from his little tiny noodle arms into his giant imp hands, and like this long collar thing with the frills on the end. So I don't think his fashion does any kind of a job expressing his character, like at all. Like I don't, but it is a thing of like, this feels very much like this is something that Vivsy Pop presumably who was the one who designed him, just thought was cool. Like, this is something that appeals to her sensibilities and her aesthetics, and that's why he looks like that, right? Like for something like for web animation and for like an OC, that's completely fine. Like, people making OCs should not be held to the same standard as like people creating commercial art for like a large audience. I think different standards should apply there. People should just chase their bliss and do whatever the fuck they want. But as a piece of storytelling, Blitz's character design is not good, I don't think. It doesn't tell the story of the character. It doesn't seem to express him very well, at least not to me. And that's something like his character design changes over the course of the season. We shall see this in later episodes. But early on, like, this is a character design that's like, this is a character design of self-indulgent sort of wants and interests, and not so much a piece of storytelling as compared to Octavia, whose like character design very much does do a bunch of storytelling about how she relates to herself, to her parents, like how she's feeling, how she's thinking about the world. That all comes through in various ways in her character design. And same thing with Stolas, right? And that's another thing that the show gets better and better at as it goes on is... Oh, right. Fucking hell, Stolas. Is it gets better and better at using its character design creatively to tell the story about who these characters are.
Why, hello, my big dick Blitzy.
What?
Dad!
Language, everyone.
Stolas, you don't get to be confused about why your daughter feels alienated from you. If you do shit like that in the kitchen right in front of... He's really kind of a shitty dad in this episode, I'm not gonna lie. Like, he learns, he does seem to sort of get it by the end, but my god, dude, like... Jesus.
I have a special request.
Oh, look, I just had a chemical peel, so you'll have to find someone else's face to plant that feathered ass.
It's for my daughter.
Ah, well, make sure she washes it.
No. I'm taking my daughter to Lululand, and I was hoping you brave little imps would accompany us.
We're assassins, not bodyguards, okay? Don't invite us to shit unless someone's gonna die.
I'll pay you.
Pay me what?
Money.
Done!
Speaking of... So, Helluva Boss is a show that develops, right? Like, it's a show that starts in one place and goes to a very different place by the end of the first season. It starts at the pilot, for one thing. And one of the things that develops over the course of the show, I think, is the relationship between Blitz and Stolas. Like, I don't know the extent to which the actual romance between them was planned from the start. Like, if it's from the start, there was this idea that, oh no, actually, Stolas is genuinely in love with Blitz, and he just doesn't have any better way to express it except the way that he does, with this, like, transactional, sort of consensual mutual exploitation that they're doing with each other, right? That's what we're at the end of the season. At the start of the season, it feels to me, the way that it's presented, like, the way that it's shown, it still feels to me like the show is, like, it's keeping that thing from the pilot, that the joke here is... ha 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 ha, very horny man with lots of money is like using Blitz for shits and giggles, right? Like sort of getting off with him for fun as we see in the episode, as a means to escape from his shitty marriage with his wife. But like, it's still in that, it's the tone thing, right? It's still in that comedy mold of ha ha ha, he tells Blitz he likes his big cock right on the phone because he's very horny, and that's very funny, and he's like all flirty and he's having fun with him. It's still being played very much for comedy in that vein, and Stolas' character, the way that he does this, the way that he has this interaction with Blitz, remains very much in the mold of he's not in love with him, he's just fucking horny, right? And that's the thing about tone again, where like it leads me to suspect that the actual depth of the emotional relationship between these two characters wasn't really fully developed at this point yet, and starts to materialize later on in the season, but isn't really, they aren't really thinking about them in such serious terms yet. I'm not 100% sure, but like it still seems like it's playing the relationship between Blitz and Stolas entirely for comedy, right? We're supposed to take this entirely as haha, funny, silly times. We're not supposed to take it seriously yet. So, coming back to aesthetic, remember, like, episode 1, the show was clearly very deliberately using an aesthetic difference between the real world and hell, to sort of do some storytelling for it. Like the part of the point was that the real world was so nauseatingly hyper-idyllic as a means to contrast with hell, to tie into that particular episode's primary theme about, like, don't get fooled by appearances, right? Like, don't let just the superficial aesthetic of things fool you. Like, there's something that's more important than just the way the things look. Second episode, again, seems to take, like, a real aesthetic decision about how it relates to like the color and the design of its world. I guess we're in a different circle of hell here, possibly, but, like, there's still, like, a very clear, strong contrast between Blitz's office and the color, like, the color space in Stolas' house, which is, like, all this fucking pink and red all over the place, and then Lululand itself, which is, like, on the one hand, much brighter, much more cheerful, much more colorful, but then on the other hand, also kind of shabby, right? Like a little drab, like a little, like, yeah, it's much more colorful, but not quite as much as, like, the human world in the first episode, like that overly cutesy nonsense that it's got going on. Stop flirting with your boyfriend in front of your daughter, by the way, dude. Like, seriously. Stolas! Honestly. Like, you can't be surprised that she feels alienated, dude. By the way, those horses in the background, I don't remember if I commented on it during the first one, but, like, those are some gorgeously rendered fucking hell horse illustrations. Did they need to be that pretty just for this one shot? No, I mean, God. But that actually ties into something else. No, we'll save that for later. But yeah, like, so here we get, like, this structure of the central emotional arc of the show is
Take the first watch while you two have a little fun.
Oh, we gotta do my favorite ride!
Oh, yeah? Which one?
Oh, crumbs.
right. Centrally, Stolas and Octavia, right? Like, where Stolas is trying to recapture a time in his life when his daughter was happy and his marriage wasn't, like, all to hell. And then around that, we have the other characters playing around, having their fun, like bouncing off of the situation. Like, that's strong formatting.
Thrilling to see you on the job, Blitzy.
Save it, bitch, I'm working.
You both need to get a room.
Hey, I am not a day hooker. What? I just said I'm not one, prude.
Oh, look, Thea! You used to cry such tears of joy at this show.
Oh,
Hang on, wait. If Fizz and Blitz are childhood friends, then why the fuck is Blitz working at the circus with the knockoff shitty Robo Clown version of Fizz? Questions for later.
I hate that fucking clown.
Oh, Blitzy! I need my bodyguard, please.
But this is the thing I've said later. Alex Brightman. I got kind of mad when he showed, like, I knew, of course he was going to turn, like, fucking of course, like, of course he will, like, how the hell could he not? But I still got mad. I still got a little, like, God damn it, Alex Brightman, you're everywhere. I love him as a performer. He's a fantastic performer, but still, it kind of like, oh my God. Okay. But Fizz, I wanted to talk about Fizz. So, because something that Helluva Boss has, that Has Been Hotel doesn't, is stuff like Fizz.
Hey, Ian, please, it's me, the robotic Fizzerali, shipped from Big Ozzy's factory to bring you a wonderful show celebrating Lululand spelled with O's to avoid lawsuits.
By the way, let's finally read this thing. This is a statement regarding the unfair accusation that my theme park Lululand is in any way trying to profit off of my friend and Lucifer's park Lulu World. That is false. These accusations are baseless and untrue. You're all just dicks. Fuck right off and stop saying that they are. That all right. They are legally distinct. I checked. Signed, Mammon. Okay. Has-Been Hotel doesn't have, first of all, shots like this. Gorgeous. But it also doesn't have animation like the fucking Fizzbot, or Fitzaroli in general. It doesn't have these fucking Adult Swim ass horrifying animatronic shit, but mostly
So my sensors spot a bear? I guess the kitties are still running away from you, huh?
The O is silent now.
Just
like the animation on the Fizzbot, like the spinning around, the twirling. Has-Been Hotel doesn't really have anything of that level of wildness. That comes out in evidence with the Fizzbot here. And there are many, many times in Has-Been Hotel where it has these showpieces, these set pieces, these big moments of like, holy the fucking shit, right? Like in Truth Seekers, like with the dream sequences, in episode 8 with Queen Bee, like her whole song and dance number. Has-Been Hotel is much more consistent, right? Like it has a much more consistent level of quality. It has a much more consistent tone. It has a much more consistent script, a much more consistent story, much more consistent characterization between its characters. But it doesn't have this. It doesn't have...
Someone's salty. Real or not, though, people love me. Does anybody love you?
No, but I'm really good with guns now. Dance, bitch!
It doesn't have shots like that. Like this kind of animator is just fucking showing off wildness that we get with the Fizzbot. Or with the fucking burning animatronics, melting teeth. I fucking love these shots. Like, the animatronics burning up is so fucking good. And, like, the Fizzbot, like, with the spinning head.
Make sure Stolas is okay. I've got some unfinished business to take care of. Oh, what a mouth.
Has-Been Hotel really doesn't have that level of wild, unfettered creative freedom. And it's another one of those things of like, shit, if that show only had more time, right? If that show only had enough time for the animators to go off on shit like this. God, like, I wish they would have had time to do that kind of showing off. That would have been great. That would have been fantastic. But yeah, that's episode 2. And the upshot of all of this, the point I was trying to get to, is that episode 2 goes here, actually. Not necessarily because I think it's... There's going to be some episodes below this that are probably, like, on the whole, better stories, right? Like, that are on the whole better, sort of... But this one took me off my feet in many ways. Like, with the opening, with the song from Stolas, with the animation on the Fizzbot, like, this episode genuinely took me off my feet. Like, it and that's partly because I didn't know what to expect, right? Like, it's not just it's not just about the objective quality of the thing, but the feeling I had when watching it is like genuinely astonishing. Episode 3, on the other hand, goes right here, and let's talk about that. Okay, episode 3 then. So, episode 3 is fine. It's a perfectly decent time. There's some good stuff in there, but it's also an episode that I'm not like, oh god, Spring Breakers, I have to rewatch that one because of it has there's the thing that like, where's the set piece? Where's the thing? Like, I would go back to episode 2 just to watch Fizzbot, right? Like, just to watch Fizzbot's animation, just to hear like the lullaby again with that powerful imagery. For me, there isn't really anything in episode 3 that's like, oh yeah, holy shit, got it. It's like a perfectly serviceable episode, right? There's nothing particularly wrong with it. It's just fine. And it's sort of like, it carries on some of the, again, because I see this as like a progressive development, it carries on some of the advances from like episode 1 and 2. Like, it has a central plot that the characters can react around. It has a central emotional arc that requires resolution by the end. This specifically being Luna, like feeling both kind of trapped and stymied by her dad and feeling lonely, like desperate for Tex's dick, for one thing, but also, like, that she's also, like, desperate for connection. She's desperate for some kind of a social life, somewhere to feel where she belongs, right? Which she doesn't quite feel like she does with her dad, which is a thing that pays off a little bit as we head on over into episode 8, but something which certainly in the next season I'd like to see that explored more with her character, like this thing about her lacking a sense of belonging. And both feeling very attached to Blitz, clearly, and loving him, but also being desperate to kind of escape it. Like, Luna is a character who I feel like she kind of needs more time to herself, to sort of dive into who she is and how she feels. Again, some very nice use of aesthetic contrast. Like, once again, we have the real human world contrasted with hell, right? With all the gray, with the urban inner city decay, all that nonsense. Which again is very well managed. Like, I want to praise the show for having like a clear, consistent, effective approach to its aesthetic, right? In a way that, like, it doesn't feel incoherent. Like, there's no incoherence between hell and the human world, but like, for example, Verosika goes on with her concert now, the cloud, like, little cloud in a heart shape, and everything sort of goes pink and horny. And that's one criticism, by the way, I have of this episode. I don't think it's horny enough. Like, episode 1, there's on-screen sex, right? Like, not explicitly enough to get banned on YouTube, but there are characters fucking, and there's like cum noises in there, right? Like, it reveled a lot in horniness. And then we get to the episode about, well, Moxie does get assaulted a little bit, which is not so funny. But like, this is all about like Blitzo going up against a bunch of succubi, right? Like a bunch of succubi and incubi, the horniest sex demons in hell, right? And yet it feels kind of chaste about it. The whole episode feels kind of chaste. Their character designs are like, yeah, horny, but not that horny. Really that horny. And there's a thing of like, I really do feel like more aggressive confrontational sexuality is kind of missing from the presentation here. And it's something, again, this thing about tone, right? Where the show in the first episode seemed much more comfortable with like using sex and sexuality for shock value, for like to go, we will go there, which like even in the episode that is set in the lust ring at the fucking fuck club with the sex cock demon, it's like, yeah, no, he gyrates and he like, oh, horny stuff, but it's not the actual animation, the actual storytelling, the actual thing itself is not actually that horny. I don't 100% know why this decision was taken. Like, it's a criticism I also had of Has Been Hotel, right? Like, is that it gestures at sex and sexuality as at debauchery, as a thing which is normal in hell, right? Like as a feature of sinners is that a bunch of them are just like, oh god, they're real horny into sex stuff. But the show itself always seems to shy away from any actual depiction that toes line. Partly, of course, this show is published on YouTube, and there are hard limits. Hard. There are very, very strict, hard limits on what you can show with sexuality. In the place of, like, I can play God of War. I can smash monsters' skulls open and, like, tear them apart, throw their brains around. I can disembowel a million monsters in Doom. No problem. Advertisers aren't upset. But a titty? Oh, no. No. Not only you're demonetized, but you are banned forever, my friend. You are sent to the Shadow Realm. So there is that, right? Like, there's the navigation of censorship, which is sort of... like, that's the condition of publishing on YouTube, unfortunately. But it does, again, have this slight bit of a tone problem, because this episode feels like it wants to be a lot hornier than it actually gets to be. Given that it's introducing succubi, right? And it's... yeah. I think it sucks a little bit. I think it's... I think this show at least should... even if it can't cross the line, right? Like, there's a line that YouTube does not allow you to cross, and the show can't cross it. I feel like it should go closer up to it. Like, I feel like it should flirt more with danger on that one. That's easy for me to say. I'm not the one who's doing the show running. I'm not the one who has, like, God knows, a couple of hundred people on payroll whose, like, jobs depend on that YouTube channel not getting fucking taken down. Easy for me to say. But still, like, that's a thing of, like, it's not an easy thing to navigate. It is absolutely not easy to run the balance of how horny can you be without running afoul of censorship systems. But, like... like, it tries, right? But it just can't actually be transgressive, right? It really doesn't go... it doesn't go far enough to, like in the same way. Again, it's that tone thing. It's like the violence. Oh yeah, no shit. Like, people's brains getting blown up, half empty skulls of people falling over. No problem. But horny. It's like, yeah, someone gyrates a bit on, like, fully clothed people are making out. Yeah. I wouldn't know how to navigate it out. Like, I don't know that I could do it any better. But it is one of those things of, like, compromise. And it's a bit unfortunate. Especially because, like, it feels like part of the draw for this particular episode was, like, the horniness. Like, and also, like, Luna specifically seems to be kind of horny for Tex. But she doesn't really get to express it. She just gets to express it in the form of, right, yeah, split a man's head open with an axe, brains frying everywhere, no problem. But God forbid, too much of a titty should be visible on screen. And again, it's the show... the show can't really... the show can't go over the line. They can't. I know. It's just, yeah. It's just unfortunate. But yeah, it's a perfectly good time. Like, the sea monster at the end is very random. Like, very just, hey, this might as well happen. Which I lament that a little bit. Like, I love the sea monster sequence. Like, I talked extensively about it in the reaction. It's gorgeous. There's some fantastic animation. I love seeing Millie get to just disembowel something big. That's fantastic. But as a resolution to the plot, it's a little bit like, come on. Like, we have this conflict between Blitz and Verosica, and it just doesn't go anywhere. Nothing happens with it, right? Like, we don't get to hear anything more about their past together. It's just big sea monster. Oh no, it was your fault because you threw the thing in the sea, and then... haha, joke about they have to get used to the taste of bacon. And it just, like, yeah... It's fine. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I feel there was more there. Like, you could push the horniness a little bit harder. Like, you could sort of push the transgression a little bit harder there. You could do a little bit more with Rosaka and Blitz's relationship. Like, you could resolve the story in another way than just, oh, she fucked up on a technicality. Yeah, small things. But it's fine. It is perfectly fine. It's a perfectly serviceable, watchable episode. I don't really have a problem with it. It's just... yeah. You know, I have my complaints. I have my nitpicks. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about here is nitpicks. Like, just little personal, like, what if this thing was better? Like, it's nothing I really expect the show to live up to, but things that are like, if a perfect world existed, I would like, you know, this thing to happen. Anyway, it's fine. It is perfectly fine. Which leads us on to episode 4, and to the surprise of no one, I think that one goes in I Won't Miss It. Now, I don't think it's quite as bad as the pilot is. And again, bad in the sense of not being objectively bad, but being, I don't care about it. I'm not interested in it. It doesn't really do anything for me. It's not quite as bad as that, but it isn't that good either. Because Cherub is really... to me, it's such a story of lost potential. It's such a story of this could have gone somewhere, this could have done something interesting, and it sort of fails to. Even this is like more horny than the previous episode in some places, honestly. Because like fucking, oh my god, this fucking guy. This guy is, of course, a major problem, right? Like, so this episode feels the closest to the pilot in tone and in the way that it's put together. This one feels the most like a follow-up to all of the things that the pilot was doing, right? Specifically, that it's just about, hey, here's imps kill people, and so... here's a man who wants them to kill someone, so they go and kill someone, and then on the way, we have a bunch of, like, edgy gags about, like, nature is brutal, and you should, suicide jokes, woo, kill yourself. And it's like, there's really nothing else to it. There's nothing else here. And it kind of sucks, because... wait, that's his sister? Barbie Wire? Someone told me that, like, white marks on imps' bodies tend to be scars or wounds. So does that mean she... or is it more of, like, this is just a way to decorate herself, or is it an indication that she has wounded herself for some reason? Okay, but this fucking guy, right? The first episode, one of the things that I think is good about it, one of the things I quite like about it, is that, yes, it's mostly a bunch of, like, it's a bunch of edgy gags, it has a little bit of a plot line, it's like, it's not deep or anything, right? It's a funny cartoon comedy thing with a bunch of violence in it, but it does have at its core a little thing, right? Like, it is mounting a criticism of the aesthetic of, like, the American nuclear family, right? Like, the aesthetic and like, the purity of the American family, the way that we revere that kind of outwardly ideal beauty. And it's sort of pointing out, like, the hollowness of those. It points out the hollowness of those aesthetics. It criticizes them. It makes fun of them. Not in any, like, it's not like a fucking video essay with a YouTuber, like, dissecting the subject in detail for 2.5 hours. But it goes there and says, like, hey, this shit, yeah, this is fake bullshit. Like you can't, like, people who look so fucking perfect on the outside can, like, it points at the hollowness, right? Like, it has a little bit of something. Not a lot. It's not a huge social criticism. It's just there sort of percolating in the background, sort of informing the way that the show handles its comedy. This episode, the imps are sent to try and kill, like, a fucking unethical billionaire dipshit who's built like a machine that would make him young, live forever, except I guess he only used it to make himself old, and then he didn't use it again because of... There's also plot holes like that, where it's like, why didn't he just use the fucking machine and get to become young? Like, what? Doesn't matter. But it's... This guy is nothing. He's nothing. He has no character. Neither does the old guy that they have to kill. Because all they are is just, oh, I'm an inventor and I'm kooky. Oh! Right? It's like there's really nothing there. There's nothing in those characters, right? And so all of the opportunities that are there, like when the fucking imps have to go and kill a couple of like extractive capitalist billionaire dipshits, right? Who have factories that pump the world full of poison and like have trillions of dollars and all that shit. God, these character designs are shit. They don't do anything with it. Like, and I'm not saying it should be like a sort of well-considered Marxist criticism of like the excess of what, just that there should be something in there. Any sense of awareness of it. Like where it's, if like Peter Thiel, right the fuck now, Peter Thiel and shit, like they're shitlords in the billionaire group right now who are trying to make themselves young by injecting themselves with teenage blood. Like it's... Elon Musk currently is doing Neuralink bullshit, right? Like there's so many opportunities there to do something. It's again that thing about transgression, right? In the same way that episode 3 is unwilling to quite try and be as horny or transgressive as it might be. Like it's unwilling to push the envelope there. It's unwilling to go a little bit too far. It's unwilling to take the risk. I understand that unwillingness. I work on YouTube too. It fucking sucks. But I think it weakens the episode in the same way. Like this one, it's nothing. Like they don't do anything with the concept of the imps are sent to try and kill a billionaire. Like even so much as making the argument to the cherubs is like, the motherfucker is a billionaire. Why the fuck do you want to save him, right? It doesn't problematize his wealth really at any point. Touch me, it's so easy to leave me all alone with the memory of my days in the... I see it, it's Mr. Mistopheles. I see it now. Oh, well, I never... They just don't really touch it. Right? And it feels like they're pussyfooting. It really genuinely feels like they're pussyfooting around it rather than really confronting it, because it's not until the end when he goes to hell and it's like, oh, being a billionaire, of course I hurt innocent people, ha ha ha. You didn't want to, like, when you're having a confrontation between the imps and the cherubs where the cherubs are like, oh, we represent good things, and you didn't want to bring that up. You didn't want to force them to try, like, wouldn't that be the place that you'd go to, like, ridicule them or attack them or try to influence them? Or even embarrass them? Like, really? It's nothing, it could have had teeth, right? Like, and it didn't have to be much. It just had to be something, so that there's some kind of fucking point to these two characters being such ridiculous cartoons, right? Why is he in, like, a superhero outfit? Why? Like, it's that, oh my god, those character designs. So that there's some kind of point to it. So that it somehow means something, rather than just being, look at these kooky characters who look silly and weird. Wow, it's yeah, it's like it's fine for what it is. I like the only thing I really like about this episode, like the only thing that really sort of gives me something, is this.
Starting to make sense now. Life is worth living because we only get one.
Like, the fact that, like, we get this little tidbit that Millie and Moxie get real fucking horny for each other when they're killing, when they're doing violence, when they're doing action, right? Like, that's a good characterization bit that I really like. And I like that they, like, it's literally they're fucking up there. And that's also a level of horniness, again, that's like, oh, cool. Like, that could be something if you were willing to go a little bit further with it. And, like, the animation of them spinning around with the guns was also quite good, but it just doesn't go anywhere. Like, it had an opportunity to try and be something, and it just doesn't. Like, it's just gags here, right? Like, it's just going for comedy. It's just going for, and that's fine. And if this had been episode 1 after the pilot, I think I would have felt better about it. Like, I think I wouldn't be so negative about it, because like this feels the most like the episode that comes right after the pilot, right? This feels the most like the episode that's trying to follow up on what the pilot was doing, rather than episode 2, which is like a complete fucking zigzag, like just whoom, off in a different direction, right? This feels much more coherent with the pilot, and would have, like, from a structural perspective of a place in the season, would have felt better as an episode 2, because it wouldn't have felt like such a whiplash. And then, like, going on to the next episodes, that would have felt much more sort of like a natural progression of the conception of the characters. But because it comes, especially after episode 2, it just, like, for me, it lands like with a dull squid. And I fuck it, I complained about it enough when I did the reaction to it. But this episode, it just doesn't work for me. I think it's really weak, and I think it misses out on a bunch of opportunities to do much edgier, much more transgressive, like much more like sort of actually offensive comedy, like a comedy that actually might offend someone, rather than comedy that's just like, oh, blood, murder, suicide, woo, right? Like it loses an opportunity there, which, you know, whatever. They can't all be bangers. So, in the interest of not spending too long just whinging about a thing that I didn't like that I've already kind of whinged about enough, let's move on to something that I really did like. Something which was a very good time. Episode 5. Now, once again, it didn't really have those genuinely astonishing, like, there was never a moment when my jaw was, like, really on the floor, but it was one of those episodes that maybe go, oh shit, that animation budget seems to be going up. Like, oh, they have the money for some... Okay, that was sort of setting me up for what's going to happen in episode 6, but it was just a real damn good time. And here, we finally get to talk a little bit more about Millie. Also, a little bit about horniness, because I still... like, it must have been intentional that the fucking fight scene with Moxie and Stryker was so damn... that it was the way that it was. But let's start at the beginning, shall we? Let's take it from the top, boys. Which is, again, like, this here alone, like, with the actual fucking BDSM gear on the screen, feels like it's more daringly horny than anything that happened in episode 3, which, again, is like, come on. Clearly there's room for a little bit, like, and maybe episode 3 was the one that convinced them to sort of be a little bit more visually adventurous with the ways they represent sex and sexuality in the show. Who knows? This also feels like an episode where, like, let's just watch the scene, actually.
I'm sorry for having to move our little rendezvous early. I have an engagement this month on the full moon.
When this happens, it's not really something I fuss about, but do you really need the book for this farm bullshit? I have like 15 new clients waiting for heads to roll.
As shocking as it may seem, Blitzy, my grimoire is actually incredibly important, and it isn't supposed to be lent out to itty-bitty ints like yourself.
Oh.
The Harvest Moon is a very special occasion. It's been my annual duty to showcase it in the Ring of Wrath. It's celebrated by a very charming little festival with the locals.
Wrath, huh? My employees are from there. I've never really been. I hear it's full of inbred chuckle fucks.
Oh, why don't you all join me at the festival? I can guarantee you all special access.
Look, I told you, we're not bodyguards, okay? That was a one-time thing we did badly.
I'm simply offering a work-free day of fun. I feel quite safe at the Harvest Festival. It's the same every year.
Well, if you promise this isn't some fuckfest invite, it does sound like it could be a blast and a half. Plus, it's not like we can do jack shit without your book anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry your clients will have to wait.
Oh, fuck my clients.
So, the relationship between Blitz and Stolas, right? Like, we know where it's gonna end up at the end. I feel like, and this is just a feeling, I don't think I can substantiate it. I feel like at this point, the interaction takes on a little bit more of the character of Stolas is trying to come up with excuses to spend time with Blitz, right? That in episode 2, it felt more like this was him playing around, like him not taking Octavia seriously enough to like fully dedicate his time and attention to her, right? Because he's sort of stuck in his own world of misery, basically. Where like playing around with Blitz is like a way for him to sort of escape his own misery, right? Like where like he invited Blitz to Lululand as a way for the plot to show that Stolas isn't taking Octavia's pain seriously enough because he still sees her as his little baby, rather than like a young woman who needs her dad to fucking take her seriously. Here it feels a little bit more like Stolas is like contriving reasons to have Blitzy along with him, right? And he's doing it in the only language that he has to speak with Blitz, which is like they're friends with benefits situation, or they're like transactional situationship that they've got going on, right? It doesn't feel like it's quite where it's gonna be at in episode 7. It doesn't feel like it's quite there. Episode 6 starts to move us to that point, I think. But it does feel like what we're getting here is that Blitz is still in the space of like, this is transactional. I'm here as a fuck toy. Like, I have no other... He does not yet, I think, show any signs of having any deeper feelings about the relationship whatsoever. But it's in the acting, the way that Stolas is acting, where like he both like takes on the sort of condescending playboy thing, little itty bitty imps like you. But then there's also like the little things, like this, right? Yeah, sure, that's flirty, but that also feels like that particular lean forward has a little bit more of a romantic edge to it rather than trying to get on his dick. Something about his acting. I do also appreciate that he does the frog blink. Right? And it's like, when Stolas has the idea, the way that... again, this is feeling. I cannot substantiate it by pointing to anything concrete in the text. The way that he gets up and he gets excited at the idea of taking Blitz with him, the little wiggle. Right? And this whole play act, like the cozy blanket that he pulls around himself, that feels more like him at the emotional space of like, I want to try and kindle something here, right? Like, of him trying to escalate the relationship beyond the transactional a little bit. Like, he's trying to push it into more of a social relationship. And, you know, onwards to a romantic one. But that's all feeling. Like, that's all vibes I'm getting, and that might be like me projecting where the relationship is later into earlier episodes, just because I know where it's going, so who knows. But Millie. This is sort of supposed to be Millie's episode a little bit, right?
Want to visit the Wrath Ring for some harvest bullshit this year.
The Harvest Moon Festival? Yee fucking haw!
Well, Millie likes the idea. Wait, where are you calling from? Mm-hmm. Of course.
this is supposed to be Millie's opportunity to have a personality, right? Like Millie's opportunity that this is where she's from, these are who her parents are, how does she relate to them? And that's, again, the criticism I have of this episode is like, it doesn't really do much with that, does it? Right? Like, it's... We get to see that she's very close with her parents, and like that she's like farm girl from out west, like she's like a country girl, with like adoring parents and a dad who's like a little bit sort of traditional, like, oh, you ain't man enough for my daughter, sort of thing. But we don't really get any sense of like what was she like when she was a child, like what were her interests, like how did she develop into being the person that she is now. There is I feel this episode was a big missed opportunity to characterize Millie. Instead it spends its time characterizing Moxie, right? And it's a little bit of a... Most of the time, I don't mind so much that Millie is the one with least personality, because as I said before, she's the one who doesn't have all the fucking neuroses. She has two parents who love her. She comes from a very stable home. She's doing a job that she loves with a man who she's absolutely fucking head over heels for. She doesn't need... There's not really anything to develop there because there's nothing wrong with her, right? And so it makes sense that the other characters get all of the character development spotlight because they have issues to work on in a way that she, at least in season 1, again, I don't know about season 2, please don't spoil it for me, at least in season 1, she doesn't really have any issues that need to be worked on, especially. Even her relationship with her parents. And that's the thing is like, I do feel like she should have been more involved in this. Because what her parents are doing by sort of rejecting Moxie is like, they are ultimately sort of trying to take away her agency a little bit, right? They're trying to undercut their daughter's choices and sort of treating her like a child. And it would have been nice if she had some scenes where she's like, specifically, like where we get to see how she relates to the way that her parents treat her, the way that her parents treat her agency, her choices, her romantic choices, her choice as a partner, like... There could have been something there, some little spark of some, like a conflict for Millie to deal with and overcome. But the episode just sort of doesn't have time for it, it seems, for the most part. And then there's Stryker. Good grief, that character is horny. That's... Also, that fucking horse. Like, the horse, I think... is like a quiet little showpiece. Also, Norman fucking Reedus. How the fuck did they get Norman Reedus? How did they get Kesha, for that matter? But how did they get Norman Reedus? Man, Jesus, I don't know. They have a great casting agency. They just really do. They just really do. Because it is a thing of, like, what does Millie see in Moxie, right? Beyond that, like, he loves her and he clearly treats her right and lets him peg her. Lets her peg him. Pronouns. Like, that's another thing that I feel could have been explored in an episode like this. Like, what is it that Moxie gives Millie that, like, she didn't find in any of the farm boys, that she didn't find in any of those, like, big, tough farmhand characters that her parents would prefer, that she was attracted to, right? There's facets missing. But honestly, for the most part, this episode is just a really good time. Like, from the montage of the Harvest Festival to Norman Reedus singing a completely inaudible song.
Sweet victory, I smell the smell. From up and stick in heaven to the rugged rocks of hell. Sweet victory.
Who the fuck? I can't hear him. I can't hear what he's saying. Where is his voice in this fucking mix? Honestly. But, you know, fair enough. Like, it seems to be part of the joke. Like, and then for the most part, we're doing, like, funny, silly comedy hour. Everyone's hanging out on the farm. Moxie feels a little bit inadequate. Can't really prove his masculinity in a way that sort of comports to this environment. Millie loves him anyway. Everything's fine. And then... Then we're doing fucking rotational camera moves, like with a 3D camera. Then we have this incredibly horny. Like, the visual language of the... Like, it's not horny in a healthy way, I should say. It's horny in a very... books you probably shouldn't read on an airplane kind of way. But, like, come the fuck on. Yeah, it's... And also a genuinely great, like, set of action animation. Like a really good fight scene, to be honest. And, like, a genuine showpiece. Millie just can't catch a fucking break in this episode. Jesus. A genuine showpiece for, like, the animator's competences, but again, Millie as a personality, as a person, as a character, just gets sidelined a little bit. Also, that move, I still love that move he does when he turns around. Right, that rather than turning around like a normal person, you get this slithering, right? Of the head coming around and the body following. Someone had a lot of fun animating Stryker, clearly. And then things get horny again, right? Really fucking horny. And then another really good fight scene. Stolas finishes up the Harvest Festival, and then that's that.
Red, Ma, and he was slippery.
Excuses. You're better than that, Mildred. You know, she protected me. And maybe I'm not a strong, beefy dickhead. But Millie has the strength enough for both of us. You two are getting on her case about being hurt by a psychopath you hired? Shame on you.
Oh, Moxie, look at you.
Still horny. Like, every shot this man is in, it's just someone, like, really... I'm not complaining, by the way. I think that's good. I think that's a fun way to cast the character. It's just, again, it's the thing about tone, right? It's like...
I failed to kill the target at the festival. But don't worry, ma'am. It won't happen again.
It better not. I want this cheating prick dead. I don't care who you have to go through. Make it happen!
Understood.
I'm sorry, I'm just silent because I'm thinking, like, she's talking about having her husband assassinated at the dinner table. Which, by the way, in episode 2, we saw pretty clearly that they have, like, frozen mice in the freezer and that they eat, like, she eats, like, bird seeds and stuff. Now they're eating potatoes and greens? Huh? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Wait, what is he... Hang on, what's the book that Stolas is reading? Imps. imps in the sheets, and why something. Why they are the best? Why they are... I don't know. But, okay, imp sex book. Yeah, sure. Like, again, it's not like Stella doesn't have reason to be upset with her husband, but... I'm still not really sure how to take this. Like, the open planning of his murder at the dinner table. Because that's very comedy, right? Like, we cut to this, like, we cut from this dramatic, like, I didn't manage to kill him this time, but I'll get him again. And, like, these shots of, like, her fingers impatiently tapping and, like, with the darkness closing in around her. And then we smash cut to the family at the dinner table. Her listening to music. Maybe Octavia didn't hear it. It's a little hard to believe, given how loud Stella is shouting. But Stola's definitely heard it. But he's not reacting to it at all here. It's, again, that thing about... Is he a domestic abuse victim in fear for his life and, like, terrorized by, like, her cruelty and her bigotry and her prejudice towards, like, the people that he cares about? Or is it haha comedy, oh, angry wife throws things around, plans your assassination, ball and chain, ha ha ha. Like, how am I supposed to take it?
I'll get him next time.
I don't 100% know. It's a tone thing, right? But suffice it to say, like, honestly, I could really go through... I already did in the reaction. Like, I don't need to do it again. Not here. This video is going to be long enough already, but... I could spend a long time going through this fight scene. And by the way, character design, right. Character design. So, Blitz doesn't wear his starting outfit at all in this episode, right? Like, he starts in the horny leather sex vest that he's got going on. Then, like, does he wear it here? Yeah, here he wears, like, his basic outfit for a second. But then, for the most part, he's wearing, like, the sort of cowboy outfit. Still has his boots. And, like, with the shirt and the collar that's open. And it just fits him so much better. Like, being in anything other than his base outfit, it really just suits him better. And does more to express how he relates to the place that he is in the world that he's in. He's dressing up in, like, good old Dan home cowboy outfit to be in the cowboy realm. Like, that it reveals something about him, right? Like, that he bothers to change his clothes to go to this place, right? Like, to fit in some way with what's here. And again, not a huge revelation, but Millie doesn't change her clothes, right? Oh, well, she does when they go home. Hang on. Yeah, no, they all changed their clothes. Like, but the point I was trying to get at is specifically Blitz. He just looks better in anything other than his base outfit, really. Which is a shame. Like, yeah. But God, I could spend hours. So fucking horny. This shot, like, what the fuck? That's incredibly charged. Like, just eye fucking each other like that, like, grabbing the hard shaft of his gun that's pointed right at... it's a really good, it's really well choreographed. And still balanced nicely with, like exaggerated cartoon nonsense. Without it undercutting anything. Ah, Luna. Yeah, look at that, like... Anyway, sorry, I just got lost in the animation there for a second. Point is, good episode, a good fun time. Didn't astonish me, but it's a good fun time. Let's move on to... Well, I think you can guess where the next one's going, but let's do it anyway, just out as a formality. Obviously, Truth Seekers has to go in genuinely astonishing, just because it genuinely astonished me. Like, the two dream sequences contained in the middle of this episode, and then the fucking Stolas summon thing at the end where he shows up. Genuine jaw droppers. Like, genuine holy shit, what am I looking at moments. Genuine, like, I could never have expected this, and I am astonished that they were able to pull it off. Right? Like, it's holy shit. Like, genuinely holy fucking shit. That they were able to fucking do that as a piece of, again, independent web animation. Like, that any of this can be funded through Patreon and merchandise sales is, yeah, fantastic. And we finally get, like, some real deep dive development into Blitz's feelings about Stolas in this lovely, lovely sequence from his dream sequence. But we'll get there. We'll get there. It doesn't begin so good, though. These two dork-ass losers sort of showing up with, like, a clip show from the previous season, from the previous episodes in the background, with their weirdly animated hands, inconsistent number of fingers, and, like, they mostly, like, the dorks mostly serve as a framing device, right? Like, for the most part, they're just here to provide an excuse for Blitz and Moxie to have their little, you know, to have the little ego trips. And it also begins to reveal immediately, like, the level of care with which Blitz that Blitz feels for his employees, that he both risks his life to save them and also uses them as blunt objects to beat his way out of a situation he doesn't want to be in. But the tone thing, this shot is like, this thing especially, like, the tone thing sort of, that's real anguish that you've animated her in there. And I do like that Luna doesn't know how to deal with it, right? Like, because of course she doesn't. But most of the episode, like, most of what happens up until the dream sequence is, for me, kind of disposable. Right? Like, it's fine. Like Luna and Millie doing a bunch of ultra-violence to a bunch of, like, G-men is fun enough. Like, it's fine. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. It's just also, it feels a bit perfunctory, right? Like, in terms of plot, in terms of, like, story. Because it doesn't really develop Luna and Millie and their relationship in any particularly meaningful way, I don't think. Like, there's no change in their relationship from the beginning of this sequence to the end, which is fine. Like, it who cares? Doesn't matter that much. But it does mean, like the episode until the truth gas which is like full 8 minutes out of not that much runtime, it feels a little bit nothing to me, right? Like, I was not impressed with it at this point, getting to this point. I was not impressed until...
Blitz? I can't see you. God, this smells awful. What's that music? Is that you? Is this a prank? Because I swear to
It
Satan...
is no prank, bitch!
Hey! Why do you sound like that?
Because you, my precious little bitch boy,
Stop it,
are
sir!
tripping balls!
No, what? How could this be? I've never tried acid shrooms or DMT. It's a bad trip. Oi, Gavalt! Of course, Blitz, this would be your fault.
At this point, I was like, oh, wait, holy shit. Like, where the fuck did they pull? Like, at this point, I was starting to be like, holy shit, that's actually... Okay, and then I started thinking about, like, oh, like, what might this mean for the characters? What might this mean for... How am I supposed to interpret this through the lines of, like, oh, okay, it makes sense. Like, Moxie is a theater kid. He's a little theater kid obsessed with Disney movies and, like, well... He's the kind of kid who would be obsessed with Disney movies and musicals. So, of course, when his brain is trying to process something, this is the language that it processes it through. And then there's Blitz. Little clown boy. Like, still that little clown. Where we open with what I think, like, seems like Blitz as a child. Right? As we come inside of his mindscape, which is this sludge. Like this mud swamp. Absolutely spiraling with slimy ghosts that hunt his every step and that stick to him. And that won't let go of him. And that, like, drip residue and debris on him and stick to him, right? Like, all these things that stick to him that won't go away. Like, this way that he can't ever feel clean, right? And that's the point where I'm kind of like, oh, okay. Like, well, not yet. I think it took me a little longer to parse the visual language of Blitz's nightmare than it did Moxie's. But once I got it, I started to be like, oh, like, and that's the point when my feet were really genuinely kind of kicked out from under me. Because that's, oh shit, we're actually doing something really ambitious with the medium of animation here. We're actually, like, using the things that animation can do to tell a story in a way that only really animation can tell it, right? Only animation can do this. To go from, like, this very specific sort of 90s VHS Disney-style Phantom of the Opera references into this fucking... psycho hellscape of like psychological torment and self-loathing, like playing with some fucking Steamboat Willie ass old school animation transitioning into like horny succubus, and then we get the fucking Stairway to Heaven where like literally Blitz feels as though the only escape from his past mistakes, the only escape from all this, all the mud, all the dirt, the only thing that can clean him, right? Like, this is the only place he feels he can go to have all of that wiped out is Stolas. Stolas is his only road to that, but that road comes with manacles, right? Which it comes through even in like the shadow blitzes standing on either side of him, fanning him. All of this being a reflection both of like Blitz's desire and like the wish that maybe this would be his opportunity to get free of the things that are haunting him, and then also a manifestation of his anxieties that he will never be anything more than a thing, right? Anything more than a plaything, anything more than a slave, essentially. That he will never be an equal, right? That whatever the benefits of the relationship, he'll never be more than this, right? Which I read as like a combination of both a desire for it, like that this is sort of him going like, shit, that doesn't sound so bad, but then also the fear of it, right? And the revulsion from it. Because because that's not, you know, it's not the way to be. Like, I think this is in part kind of a sex fantasy. In the way that erotic fantasies often pull from the things that we fear, right? Like, they often pull from, like, the forbidden corners of our minds, the taboo of it, allowing us some control over it. But he's not happy about it, right? Like, Stolas is his only chance of escape, but also no escape, right? Once that collar is on, that's where you're stuck, right? It's also a loss of freedom as an exchange. I do like that Moxie just casually cross-dresses in his mind. And indeed in real life, which is lovely. And when he cross-dresses, it's as a Disney princess.
Are you worried I may have enough of it one day as well?
Stop fucking talking, all of you!
That was the point where I was like, holy fucking shit. Like, okay, now it's not just... Because that's the thing about, like... Animation as a medium can do everything that film can do, right? Like, anything you can do in live action, you can do in animation, right? Like, full stop. That's just possible. That doesn't mean that live action doesn't have certain advantages over animation. Like, animation can never match live action for realism, for example, when it comes to human performances. But, like, animation can do sort of... Basically, anything you want to do on film, you can do on animation, but animation could do things that just you can't do in any other medium. Like, other mediums simply can't approach... And I don't mean 2D animation, I mean all animation, 3D animation included. You just can't do those things in any other form. And for me, the animation that gets me excited, like stuff like Into the Spider-Verse, for example, it is animation media that does stuff that only animation can do. That's why, like, The Thief and the Cobbler is so fucking... such an amazing masterpiece. Just visually, like, think about the story what you will, but just the shit that movie does visually, that you just simply, you can't get it anywhere else. These are the things that only animation can truly deliver. And this episode does that. Like, this episode does that. You cannot go from, like, the Disney thing to this hellscape in anything but animation. Like, nothing but animation could do that transition between styles and use, like, the interplay between our expectations of what does this animation aesthetic mean, right? With the images that are happening and the interplay of the character. Like, it's animation or nothing, right? So this is something I can only get to see. These are scenes that I can only get to see in animation, and that's why it makes me excited. Like, that's why I'm so like, fuck yeah! That's why I get so happy from this. Because nothing else can give me this, right? And then it doesn't... And from that perspective, it doesn't really matter if it's bad or good that much. It does matter, but, like, even if the episode hadn't been good, right? Like, even if the whole episode had been kind of as much of a nothing burger to me as most of the opening of the episode is, which is like the interrogation scene going on a little bit too long, the villains being completely personality-free nobodies who I don't give a shit about, like who just aren't interesting as villains, and who just don't matter to me, and I cannot give a shit about what happens to them. I don't even care about them being defeated that much, because they don't mark themselves out as villains. Even if the rest of the episode had been like that, where it's like, oh, that's fine, whatever. Just this swing for the fences, this attempt to do something which is truly unique, which only exists in this medium, which can only be realized in this medium, that would be enough to put it on the top of the tier list for me. Because, like, that's the fucking point, right? Like, when you are independent, when you have an independent animation budget, when you have, like, when you're financed by Patreon and merchandise sales, this is what you should be doing with that. This is what you should be trying to do with that. Like, that's what you should be doing with your medium. You should be pushing it. You should be doing shit. Like, shit that just wouldn't be possible otherwise. Ought to happen here. And it's just really fucking good. And then, of course, we get the fight scene. The big, cathartic, everyone just gets to let the fuck loose fight scene.
I've had one too many emotions for today, guys. Let's fuck these fuckers up!
I'm still really in love with the way Luna is animated here. Because, again, I talked about this during my reaction, right? But so many of the frames of her, like the way that the animator handles her body, like the distortions and the deformations that they go through, like where it's all about keeping the flow of motion, right? Like where it's all about keeping the movement, even if, like, the distortions look completely bizarre, because it's just all about movement flow. It's just all about keeping that kinetic energy rolling, right? And then very occasionally these incredibly like this fucking chain animate. That's some she's on some fucking Belmont shit right here. Like the Netflix Castlevania series also does a bunch of really cool fucking shit with like chains and whips and shit in that way, and they're just casually replicating that level of competence here, which is like, oh. And the fact that it's also character building. Like, this is the thing that, like... Again, I talked about this in my reaction already, but, like, really good fight choreography is always storytelling. It's always... It's not just who wins the contest of strength. It is what is the relationship between the characters that are involved, right? So... Here, like, the fact that Blitz gets to show off being team dad, like, working very well together with his team, covering their weaknesses, helping them out, like, being there for them when they need him. And, like, we get to see Millie just absolutely having some fucking fun here. We get to see Luna just letting her ferocity rip. Because, like, Luna, like, again, that's the thing, like, Millie sort of seems to take a lot of pleasure and joy in, like, the technical aspect of fighting, right? Like, she's just very fucking good with her fucking axe. She's really good at it. Luna, on the other hand, it's like, this girl is just letting some emotional issues out right now, right? Like, it's not really technique and like, grace. It's like, I'm gonna bite your fucking head off, you piece of shit. Like, the anger that's there. So it tells us something about her character, like, how she enacts violence gives us some information about how she feels inside, right? I
am just so damn proud of you, Looney. Bye, sweetie. Oh. Hey, Mills.
Hey, Liz! Just one sec!
Do you need a gun or anything?
Nah, I'm good.
How about some...
Oh, what a way to go.
Sure. Thanks, Blitz.
No problem, Millie Billy.
some quality time with Daddy.
What a fucking victory lap. What a victory lap it is. Right? Because it's a self-indulgent stick-fighting fight scene, which is just all about here's characters doing violence in cool ways, but it does some storytelling. It tells us something about who they are. And then, of course... then there's the entrance. Ah, bit crushing.
Who dare threaten my impish little plaything? Who said that?
Agent O!
What's the matter, Demon Hunter?
Never seen a real demon before.
Also, this expression on Blitz's face when Stolas shows up. Just noting it. But this fucking thing.
Stole it. Well, hold on. How did you know that we needed help?
I have my ways, darling. Are you all right?
And this is also, like, this is where the transition fully goes from Stolas being a horny playboy who just wants his little fuck toy to, okay, there's something else going on here.
Ways, darling. Are you all right?
Oh, I'm fine, Stolas.
Good.
How the fuck did you get caught by humans? Are you little creatures not being careful up here? You know, if you get in trouble, I get in trouble. We don't want that.
They caught us off guard, Your Highness.
Yeah, you can unclench your bird puss, Stolas. It's not gonna happen again, okay?
Luckily for you, most don't believe the word of the demon-obsessed lunatics. They are seen as kooks.
Kooks. Such a silly word. Now, let us all return.
Yes, please. I'd like to get back to the correct hellhole as soon as possible.
Am I going to get any thank you for the rescue, Bitsy?
Well, I suppose you should. Want me to fuck your brains out tonight?
Very much so.
And the little... that, again, props to the character animators for handling that so well that Blitz tries to put on the... okay, we're doing the transaction, cool, I'm gonna offer him the thing that he wants. And then Stolas comes in. Hang on. That feels a little too, like, weirdly. Even though he's just offered him sex, it's like, oh, that feels a little too intimate.
All right, but you're keeping quiet, or I'm
So we gotta grab him by the hair,
using those bear traps.
and we gotta make it horny, right? Like we can't. It can't be sweet. It cannot be. It cannot be in any way sort of romantic. It has to be.
Oh, please do.
It has to be horny, right? Before he gets comfortable with it.
So what now?
What now?
Anyway, these fucking assholes. That's another criticism of the first season. Its villains kind of fucking suck. I'm sorry, they just kind of do. Like the family in episode 1 are like, they're not supposed to be anything, right? They're supposed to be, they are there to fulfill a function, right? Like that's perfectly fine. They're not characters. They don't matter. They're not going to come back. And like in episode 2, there's the Fizzbot, I guess, but it's not really the villain of the episode. Like, insofar as there are villains, it's the random imps that try to kidnap Stolas. Which, like, again, they don't matter. That's also kind of fine. Episode 3, Verosika, right? And she's the first one where I was really kind of disappointed that she didn't get to be more of an actual villain here. Like, again, that thing about... I wish there had been a little more time in the episode to actually develop her and Blitz's relationship. Like, to get into some of the shit that happened between them. We know that Blitz fucked the relationship up in some way or another, but it's like, if there were more personal stakes there, if there was like a little bit more... And it's like, for episode 3, it's kind of fine, but it's because I kind of expected her to come back in some capacity or be part of the plot of more of the episodes, where she could have been developed. There could have been more dynamic. We could get more of a sense of like what their bitter ex relationship is. That never really happened. And so she's not really a very compelling villain in that episode. She's not even really a villain. She's just kind of an obstacle that the characters have to overcome. Right. Episode 4, the Cherubs, that was a big disappointment again, because like, what the fuck are they? Aren't anything. Like, where there was an opportunity like to sort of construct them as an interesting sort of equal opposite to the imps, right? Like, even if the point at the end is to reveal their hypocrisy, but all it really does is like, oh, you violated a technicality and now you're stuck on Earth forever. Have fun with that. Bye. And like, they never really get to be developed as villains, as characters that have anything to say for themselves. Mostly they're just punching bags, right? Like, mostly the episode is just about, haha, these cherubs are stupid and wrong, and like the imp should kill the guy. Haha. Like, they're cloying and annoying, and who cares about them, right? Like, the episode has no respect for them, and so why would I? Right, episode 5, I will say Stryker's good. He's like the one good villain, and we get the indication that he'll return, that he's going to keep trying to kill Stolas, and the guys will have to deal with him. He has a dynamic with Blitz, right? Like, he has a dynamic where he plays on Blitz's insecurities, and like, he clearly has a point of view. He has an ideological point of view, even if it's stupid and hypercritical. He has one, right? And he clearly gets off on like hurting the imps. He gets off on hurting the main characters. Like, so there's a villain who's like, I hear he's gonna come back. I'm quite excited for that, but he's like the only one. It's just fucking Stryker. These guys are nothing. They're nothing. Like, they don't matter. Like, and it really does annoy me by the end of the episode that they try to set them up as recurring, like that these guys are gonna go and try again, right? Because it undercuts... What was the point of all this then? What was the point of this? And this? Like, what was the point of all of this if the only effect it has is that they're scared for 2 minutes and then they go right back to it with no... Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter that Stolas did this to them, because they just go right back to being the same dorks that they were at the start of the episode. Like, nothing that happens changes anything about who the villains are or their motivations, right? It doesn't even seem to be about revenge for them. Like, it's not even, oh yeah, you killed like 400 million of my colleagues, I want vengeance on you. They're still at the same level of, this time headquarters will have to take us seriously, right? And it's like, you're trying to make them into Team Rocket, I guess? Like, you're sort of trying to position them like a Team Rocket sort of character thing, a recurring villain of the weeks. But that's not... They don't come back. They're not in the next 2 episodes. I don't know if they're in Season 2. Maybe in Season 2 they do something a little bit better with them. But they're nothing. And they don't have any personalities. They're the same person functionally in terms of how they act within the plot. They don't have a dynamic. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you want to make them Team Rocket, you better have fucking Jesse and James, right? Like, you better have some fucking personalities there that can bounce off of each other, and they don't. These are nothing. They're no one. They don't matter. They have no, like, there's no malice. There's no peril when they do the thing. This time we'll keep hunting them and we'll try and convince the boss about the thing. I feel there's no tension there, because they're not threatening. They're not dangerous in any way. They're like, in no small part, because like entire latter half of the episode is about dispatching them like goons, because that's all they are. They're just goons, right? They're nobodies. And it sucks, like, because something like a human demon investigation agency could be a really compelling set of villains, right? Like, if they had motivations, but they don't. The only motivation these guys have that are expressed within the show is like, yeah, this time our boss will have to take us seriously, which is, woo, what a villain, what an enemy. Like, it's that they're being set up as like, oh, they'll be back in the future. Is like, I don't give a shit. I cannot care. I care about Stryker. Stryker is cool. Bring Stryker back. Get some more horny snake action going. But these guys, I mean, if we need another cathartic fight scene where everyone just gets to churn through a million goons, I guess, sure, you're useful enough, but I don't care about you as antagonists. Like, what does going up against you do for our protagonist? Well, nothing, because the only personal movement, like the only change in our protagonist here happens entirely internally, right? Like, all the change that happens in the relationship between Moxie and Blitz, and like the things that we see, this is all internal. Like, none of that has anything to do with the agents. And like, it could be, you could fucking have a plot where, oh, they drink ayahuasca for the first time. You could have a plot where it's like, they get knocked out and they have a falling off a building, and then they have like coma dreams, or like a million things could put them here. There's nothing about the agents that nothing necessitates the agents in order for this to happen. And there is no dynamic between Blitz and Moxie and the dorks. Right? There isn't one. It's just, they just make fun of them and they don't take them seriously and they don't care. Because why would they? Because they're losers and they're ineffectual and they have no, like... So yeah, like, the villains are a problem. They're a big disappointment for me with this episode. And with this season in general, the villains are just not... Stryker's the only good one. Right? Because Fizz isn't really a villain in episode 7. And there isn't a villain in episode 8. And like, neither is horny guy Ozymandias. No, whatever the fuck his name is. He's not a villain either. He's just a guy who's there. Like, he's not even really an antagonist in a narrative sense. Just in the sense that he's like slightly annoying to Moxie for a bit. Because that episode isn't about villains. Like, villains are not important to that episode. That episode is a soap opera, and the centerpiece is, like, the love drama between Stolas and Blitz, and, like, contrasting that with the very happy relationship between Moxie and Millie. But that's next episode. We'll get there. Anyway, my point is, this episode knocked my fucking socks off, right? Like its centerpieces, its big cathartic fight scene, and the 2 dream sequences are just genuinely astonishing use of animation as a medium. Genuinely fantastic. I really, really genuinely... I wouldn't get this anywhere else. No other show would show me this, would give me this kind of storytelling. Whether it's good or bad, nothing else does this, right? And that novelty, that uniqueness is worth a lot. So, right into that tier it goes, which leaves us with episode 7 and 8. So, that goes squarely in the very good time tier. Episode 7, don't get me wrong, episode 7 is a good episode, and it does some really interesting storytelling about the characters. It's a really fun time. There's a great musical number in there, a couple of them actually. And I had a very, very good time watching it, but it never astonished me. Like, there was never a moment where, like, beyond the production quality was amazing here. Like, there was some real fucking flexing going on from the animators. But at this point, I'd already seen episode 6. And so at this point, it was less, holy fucking shit, where did that come from? And more, Jesus fucking Christ, they're doing it again. which is worth something in and of itself. But also, like, it never knocked my socks off. It just entertained me thoroughly the whole fucking time. And I just had a really good time the entire fucking time. And there was a bunch of really nice animation there for me to look at. And there's a bunch of cool shit happening for me to enjoy. But nothing astonishing. Like, nothing that went beyond what I could have imagined the show was capable of doing, right? So, let's, hang on, let me see. Yeah, gotta click on that thing. There we go. So, Ozzy, I can't remember if I said this previously. I did not clock that he was supposed to be a rooster at all in his character design, I'll be honest. I really don't get that from his character design at all, that he's based on a rooster. In part because, well, there's no indication of a beak on his face. That's kind of a big thing for birds. But mostly also, I didn't identify him as a rooster. Insofar as I thought he was based on anything, I was thinking initially moths and butterflies, because that's what the tendrils on his head sort of look like, the fuzzy tendrils of a moth, or else a bird of paradise, right? Like, insofar as if he is a bird, then for me, I would say bird of paradise is more the thing, because like those are like very specifically known for having like these extravagant physical decorations upon them that they use for courtship and to get laid, right? So that was more where I identified him. The fuck is his name? I keep going for Ozymandias, but that's a different thing. Like, he doesn't have two vast and trunkless legs. There is very much trunks of those things. But let's start at the beginning. Again, there's like an immediate change in production quality here. Even from episode 6, I feel. Which, I mean, I don't know how the show exactly works with its outsourcing, and the way that it handles those things, but the environment design and just a lot of the background work, especially, like this fucking heaven terminal ass thing, whatever the fuck this is. Right? The background designs here, just the environment design that's... there. Once again with the circus aesthetic, keeping that consistent from Has-Been Hotel into like, across the various parts of the Helluverse.
Hello there, buddy. You got a reservation?
Oh yeah, I'm with those two.
This club is for couples only.
It's what?
No date, no reservation, no entry.
You know, you have really nice eyes, Daddy.
Blitz, you pathetic little disaster. Stolas, you pathetic little disaster. You are so wet and sopping and pathetic. You should be wet and sopping and pathetic together, shouldn't you? Yeah, you should.
Why won't you let me, Alejandro?
That's a mood, Gabriella.
Hello, Blitzy.
He's so pathetic. It's so cute.
Stolas, hey, you busy tonight?
Why do you ask?
I was wondering if you want to come with me to a club tonight.
Are you asking me on a date?
Oh, the poor boy. Like, just... one thing I really do appreciate about this episode is the way you can see all the dominoes being set up for the inevitable catastrophic collapse. And it's like, you just get to anticipate the shipwreck that's coming, right? Like, you just get, oh, I can see the iceberg. It's out there. We're not changing course. We're going straight for it. Oh, this is going to be good. Oh, this poor boy. These two dumb motherfuckers, right? These two stupid dipshit idiots incapable of communicating properly with each other. And it's the thing of, like, you can see that Blitz... even here.
I was wondering if you want to come with me to a club tonight.
You can see that Blitz kind of knows that this is a bad idea, right? Even if he won't quite admit it to himself, he knows it's not a good idea because he knows already, like, that Stolas will take this further than Blitz wants him to, right? He doesn't know why. He hasn't yet realized it's because the motherfucker is actually in love with you, you stupid dipshit. But he has very good reasons not to know, because Stolas is dipshit terrible at communicating it as well. Right? He doesn't seem to have trouble admitting it to himself so much, but he seems to have so much trouble, like, actually asking Blitz for what it is that he really wants. And it's like, you just... Oh, you poor little morons, you poor little incommunicative, broken, damaged dipshits. Oh, you're going to do so much emotional damage to each other.
Are you asking me?
And, like, a lot of props to the animators, the way they handle, like, the little micro movements in Stolas' eyes as he's, like, processing what Blitz just said to him. Did you just say what I thought you said? Are you asking me on a date? Right? And you can see, like, little poor boy is close to crying almost.
On a date? Let's see.
Yes, I suppose that is what's happening.
Oh, Blitz, like, he knows this is a bad idea, right? Like, he knows it's not a smart thing to do. By the way, like him a lot more in that fucking leather jacket than I do in his normal outfit. Because the leather jacket feels much more true to the kind of guy that he is than the suit he usually wears. He knows it's a bad idea, he just doesn't know why, right? He just doesn't quite understand why it's a bad idea. It's so tragic. It's so sad.
See you soon.
I'll see you, Blitzy.
And those fucking volume cloud. Fuck them. Goddamn fucking animators.
Come on, come on, come on.
Oh, Blitzy! I'm here.
The fucking spotlight. Like, the animators know what they know what they're doing. Good direction choices as well, that Blitz sees him as like, why the fuck is he dressed up? Right? You can see he doesn't know. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand. Like, why is he dressed up?
Wow. That's a bit overkill, don't you think?
Blitz, you're such an idiot. Like, it's understandable. Like, he has good reasons to be the way that he is, and Stolas hasn't communicated it properly with him, and Blitz has no reason to think it, so that's why it's funny. And, the poor boy, you can see his heart breaking here. Right? You can see him, like, you get literally grasping at his chest like, oh god, that stung, I can't let it show. Yeah, put the persona back on. Put the mask back on. I am a suave, romantic prince here to go on my date. And Blitz just does, like, he thinks Stolas is still playing a game. He thinks this is just Stolas having whatever fun he wants with his toy, and he's like consenting to take on the role of toy in exchange for he gets to go into the club and stalk his employees. In part, and this is something someone observed to me in the comments, and I think that they're very right about, in part because, like, part of why Blitz is so fucking obsessed with Millie and Moxie is because they have a happy relationship, and he thinks that's something he can never have in his life. And so, like, he stalks them and like, is so obsessed with them and so focused on them because he's trying to experience romantic happiness vicariously through them because he thinks it's not available to him.
Do we have a problem?
Oh, shit. My apologies, Your Highness. Please, go right in.
Oh, my.
And the background work, this fucking episode with the background work. Just genuinely, like, an absolute fucking hero effort from the background designers. And the environment designers here. And the animators, like, really, the job they're doing of showing the disconnect between Stolas. That's the other thing, like, I guess we'll talk about that when we get there. Let's skip ahead a bit. Let's get to fucking Fizz.
I see some sexy faces around here tonight. Welcome, welcome to Ozzy's, Lust Ring's #1 place for all kinds of sick, twisted fantasies. Put on display for all you sleaze and sleazettes. The gem...
Again, I will raise the criticism. It's like, yeah, welcome to Aussies, the horny fuck place for all the perversion and dirtiness and all of that. And yet, it's like, yeah, they're hot. They're all fucking hot, but it's not exactly pushing the envelope, I don't think. This might also be, like, just... Obviously, my tolerances are different than a lot of people's are. I know that probably the audience of this series probably skews quite young, right? Like, it certainly seemed to be pitched at, like, teenagers, right? So, like, maybe there's also a consideration among the creators. It's like, okay, there's only so far we should push it, given that we know the age demographics of our audience, which might be quite young. Maybe there's a good reason on that front to sort of hold back a bit and not push it too far. But it is that thing, like, I really do think that there is, like, a streak of puritanism that's unfair towards teenagers and children in terms of, like, oh, poor teenagers, if they see a titty, oh, why, they'll be traumatized. Oh, won't someone think of the children? It's like, as though kids as young as 12 aren't looking at Pornhub. Like, we know that happens. Like, they have seen it. If they were traumatized by it, that's already happened. And generally speaking, I think it's substantially more traumatizing for young people to grow up in a world that, like, almost obsessively denies them access to any exposure to sex under, like, approved conditions, so that the only exposure they can have is them going to see stuff they're not supposed to see and can't talk to anyone about, right? Because we know this, like, we know that when people come out in, like, when young people come out into the world, having had no proper sex education, having had nobody willing to sit down and talk to them and answer their questions and put their concerns and their fears to rest, that they go out into the world believing things like you can't get an STD from anal, right? Or that you can't get pregnant if you're not married, or like genuinely believing the most insane things, having no idea how to use a condom or even, like, what other methods of contraception are available. And it's like, there is this thing of this, oh, think of the children thing that's used as an excuse to keep them ignorant more than to protect them. Because when they're ignorant, you can control them, right? Like, when children are ignorant, you can tell them stuff like, well, if you have sex outside of marriage one time, you're going to get an STD and die! And they'll have to accept it because they don't know any better. And it's like... When people are ignorant, you can control them through fear, right? And I really think that there is, like, not in the sense that children should be shown pornography, obviously, don't take my words, like, don't go for the most ridiculous, stupid-ass, dipshit, moron, Twitter-ass interpretation of what I'm saying right here. Just that I don't think it's gonna traumatize a child if something like this was more openly sexual. It's like, really? Like, you think that's gonna do it? So, like, while I can completely understand if that's part of the consideration for the creators of the show, it's like, if they're not comfortable with that, like, if they're not comfortable creating something that is more explicitly sexualized because it is going to be shown to an audience of children, that's understandable, and that's their right, and indeed, it's a good thing that they exercise it to not go too far. Like, if they're not comfortable with it, they shouldn't, and if they're not ready for that responsibility that comes with doing that, obviously they shouldn't. It's just... Yeah, I come back to it all the time that, like, oh yeah, like, someone's head getting split open with an axe and their brains spilling everywhere, people getting dismembered and blown to pieces and, like, blended into a fine tomato paste on an axe that's spinning, and fine, no problem. Who gets traumatized by that? No one does, right? Like, that doesn't have an effect on people, but if you saw someone doing a hand job motion on their table in the background of one of these shots because they were having, like, sex at the table or whatever. That is somehow... yeah, and I'm annoyed with that particular hypocrisy that we have in society. Like, the sheer level to which we're fine with gratuitous, brutal, sadistic ultraviolence, but God forbid someone has an orgasm at some point, right? But anyway, Fizz.
Welcome to Ozzy's.
Again, that thing of like, we would not get this animation in Has Been Hotel. We didn't get this animation in Has Been Hotel. There are times when the character animators just get to go fucking haywire with some shit, and Fizz is a great example of it. That is just beyond the level that I ever think I saw in Has Been Hotel.
Place for all kinds of sick, twisted fantasies. Put on display.
Yeah, sick, twisted. Oh my god, look at that guy. Girl, them. Look at them. Oh, fucking hell. How horny are they? Come on. And it is a thing of like, it does... I do think it weakens it a little bit. I do think it weakens the narrative even of this episode a little bit, because like, the point is Moxie gets on stage, he sings a sappy love song, and that's like, everyone sort of goes, what the fuck are you singing a sappy love song in here for? But on the other hand, it's like, oh yeah, like the extremely horny atmosphere of everyone just absolutely getting it on everywhere, and like, yeah, wow.
Asmodeus himself.
Asmodeus! That was his fucking name.
Come on, give him some love.
Did he just say Asmodeus? Oh, no fucking way. Not him.
I am the one and only Fizzerali. Some of you might recognize this dashing clown face from my numerous toy-botic replicas across the rings of hell. Gloriously designed by the big man himself, and, ribbed for your pleasure tonight. We have a great lineup for you tonight. Thurasica Mayday, Wet Dream, and the Squirters! But as everyone's warming up, I got a funny one for y'all. Did any of you hear about the bat shittery that happened at Lululand? Oh yeah, wow. You know, I'll tell you what.
Okay, let's skip ahead to... Yeah. Aussie's introduction.
Who's singing love songs in my lustful lounge?
Ozzy's ain't the place for sentimental sounds.
What'd you expect from a proprietor like us?
Your demon host, Asmodeus, the embodiment of lust.
Give me a thrust. You show me some love. From the groin to the bust, in desire we trust in the house of Asmodeus.
God, just good fucking... I'm doing a full reaction to this fucking episode, aren't I? Shit. I was explicitly trying not to do that. I was explicitly trying to skip through things and not... But fuck me. Like, he's very well animated.
You came here to sing your serenade. Perform your feelings on a velvety stage. Well, we got a saying that's popular in these pods.
Only little bitches strum the strings in their hearts.
You wanna hang around this lustful town? Ditch the lovey-dovey before we knock you around. Here we sing about wants and desire.
Depravity, savagery, loins hotter than fire.
So give me a thrust. Show me some lust. From the groin to the bust, little imp, you just must in the house of Asmodeus. Come on, sing us a song. Make sure.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I keep getting caught up in the fucking animation. The thing I wanted to specifically. This moment, right? A lot of people were talking in the comments about one of Stolas' big fuck-ups here is that when he's confronted about whether he and Blitz are together, that he hides away, right? And he seems to deny it, right? Like, out of shame. And Blitz, like, clearly Blitz fucking takes that personally, right? So that's a hurtful thing. That's a thing that hurts Blitz for good reason. But I do feel like the context of that is the entire evening, right? Stolas has been trying. He's been trying so hard to get any of Blitz's attention, right? To get any sort of indication from him that Blitz enjoys his company, wants to be here, would like to have a romantic relationship with him, right? Like, that's the whole point of him getting dressed up, coming down, like, sort of trying to be Prince Charming, flirting with Blitz constantly, and Blitz isn't giving him anything. Like, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And progressively throughout the evening, you see this even at the first moment when he comes down, and Blitz gives him that's a bit much, don't you think? You see his heart break a little bit there. You see him feel foolish, right? You see him go, okay, I'm gonna keep pretending on this because, like, it's just Blitz. Maybe he's just, we'll have a romantic evening yet. He's trying so hard to make it work, and Blitz gives him nothing. He gets nothing. He gets no attention. He gets no feedback. He gets no indication whatsoever that Blitz wants to be seen with him. So when he hides away behind the menu, it's like, Blitz is understandably hurt by it. Understandably, of course he is, because it's a hurtful thing to see someone, like, deny their association with you that way, especially when the boy already has so many insecurity issues. But not for nothing, but if Blitz had given him from the start, you look great tonight, I'm really happy to be here with you, if he'd given him attention, if he'd paid attention to him, if he had flirted back, if he had indicated that he wanted that kind of relationship with Stolas, I think, to Stolas' credit, in this moment, he would have plucked up his courage and said, yeah, he's my boyfriend, what are you going to do about it? Like, I think he would have stood up and said yes, but it's because he's already at the point where he feels so stupid for hoping, so stupid for believing that this would be anything, right? Like, so stupid for thinking that Blitz might have really wanted to have a romantic date for him. He's already feeling so embarrassed, and he's getting every indication that Blitz doesn't want to be seen to be in a relationship with him. Blitz just wants the transactional part. So, like, of course he hides. Right? Like, to the point where I even think, like, at this moment, he's like, I shouldn't let him see me be upset by this, because that will embarrass Blitz more, right? Like, Blitz will be even more upset if I try to, like, hold on to him and say, yes, we're in a relationship right now, because clearly he doesn't want to be, right? So it's like, yeah, this hurts Blitz, but it's like, Stolas isn't trying to hurt him at all. Stolas is having a completely understandable reaction to rejection. Complete rejection and embarrassment and feeling stupid and feeling ashamed. It's like, that's why it's tragic. That's why it's good. That's why it's good soap opera, is because, like, neither of them are a villain. Neither of them are the bad guy. They're both damaged people acting out their damage in a way that, like, causes conflict and abrasions between them, in a way that causes them to hurt each other, even though they don't want to. Right? Like, Blitz doesn't want to hurt Stolas either. He just has a completely wrong understanding of what their relationship is. Rather, he has a wrong understanding of what their relationship can be, because he doesn't believe that he'll ever be anything other than a cute little fuck toy that Stolas likes to play around with. But, like, among how many others? Like, how many other imps are fucking him? Blitz doesn't know. Right? Like, Blitz doesn't know that Stolas has an actual romantic commitment in his back pocket here. And can't know. He cannot think that way. He cannot dare to hope that way, because he's so stuck in what a fuck up he is. And it's contrasted, like, very explicitly with both Asmodeus.
'Cause I love
Both Asmodeus and Fizz is like, yeah, oh, no one sings love songs in my house. Oh, my little boyfriend, I love you so much. Like, come on, dude. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Oh, only losers strum the strings of their... Guys, you too. I see you. Fuck off. But also...
'Cause I love
And then the contrast here, right?
You know what, this was...
And, Stolas, he doesn't know it, but it's a mistake to reach out at this point, because Blitz already feels turbo rejected also. Like, and rejected not in the sense of, like, socially rejected, right? And like at this moment, Blitz is volatile. At this moment, Blitz is like, there's 500 million really nasty feelings rolling around in here. And he's holding it together. But trying to reach out and touch him to give him affection in this moment, it's like, that's gonna trigger the bomb, right? That's gonna crack the shell, and he can't crack here because he has to hold on to the persona, right? He's so set on holding on to his persona. So like at this moment, again, if he and Stolas had a greater capacity for emotional intimacy prior to this point, if Blitz had been able to trust him prior to this point, that's the fundamental thing, is Blitz doesn't trust Stolas. He can't trust Stolas. Because again, he thinks Stolas is just using him, and he cannot imagine that anyone would want him for anything more than that. So trying to give him affection in this moment, like, that's not gonna read like affection to Blitz, right? That's gonna read like, oh, he's trying to grab me, he's trying to possess me, he's trying to hold on to me, which as we saw from like his dream sequence, he hates being held down. Like he fears, he also eroticizes it, but he fears being tied down, being locked into something, being trapped in something. That's why all the mud, right? And everything clinging to him all the time and like robbing him of his ability to be free and be himself. Like he's stuck in that like contradictory space where he kind of like he wishes somewhere deep inside of himself that he could have something, but he's also not capable of believing it.
Against me. Get the fuck out.
Amazing that Millie and Moxie survived that, by the way. Asmodee is clearly not one for violence. And again, like, returning to the thing we talked about with episode 6, using the medium of animation to do things. Well, more specifically, using film language. Like, I love the crampedness of the van, right? That the space here, it's an uncomfortable place for Stolas to be, just fundamentally, just because of his size, but also, it's an uncomfortable situation. And he's getting, like, the thing that is causing a big part of the thing that's causing the rift in their relationship is all of Blitz's baggage, like all of the trash that he's got weighing him down. So what do? We literally have him struggling to get past all of Blitz's trash, right? And anyway, I talked about this in my reaction, like the use of like the door as a barrier, and like Stolas being the one who tries to poke through, who tries to sort of bridge the gap between them, and Blitz simply not being in an emotional space to handle it right now. Right? He can't play the role right now. He cannot pretend to be the sexy little imp fuckboy, the gigolo. He cannot do it right now. And he thinks that's what he's being asked to do, because he has no reason to think otherwise. And Stolas doesn't understand how to not communicate it, right? Like, he doesn't understand how to get past that. Poor boy. It's not his fault. Like, how would he know? Like, it started out as something entirely transactional after all, right? Like, it started out as, like, we don't know how it happened with, like, as far as I understand, someone told me in the comments anyway, it's Blitz tried to steal the grimoire from Stolas. Stolas caught him, and then somehow that ended up in, like, a fuck relationship. Right? Like, neither of them entered into this for a romantic relationship. Like, Stolas probably went for Blitz just because it was somewhere to escape to, right? Like, he had not exactly in a happy situation. Here was a chance of him doing something pleasurable and fun for himself. It probably wasn't supposed to be any more than that. And, like, how the fuck do you navigate transitioning it from one thing to the other if this little fucking halfway to a virgin boy has never been in anything other than a loveless marriage? Right, like, if his marriage was arranged, which again was something I saw a bunch of people talking about in the comments, that it was probably an arranged marriage between, like, high noble families, it was probably loveless from the start. Like, yeah, no, it's, of course he doesn't have any relationship experience. Of course he doesn't know how to communicate his needs and his wants clearly. Of course he doesn't. How would he have learned? Right? And Blitz, the person with far more experience in relationships, unfortunately mostly has bad experiences. And it's just it's a tragedy, right? It's the iceberg. They're crashing headfirst into the iceberg. All the engineers are trying to, like, save the boilers from exploding. The ship is starting to list, and, like, in 10-15 minutes the ass is going to crack off and the whole thing is going to sink into the sea. It's the inevitable tragedy, right? Not because anyone tried to make it a tragedy, not because anyone was aiming for the iceberg, but just because that it was the only place their course could take them, right? No one wanted to go there, but it ended up there. It's delicious. And here's Blitz doing... So there's a concept that's known as digital self-harm, right? Which is... I don't know how accepted it is, but, I mean, I feel like I've fucking seen it happen, which is when you intentionally immerse yourself in media that primarily just causes you pain, right? And that serves sort of the same physical emotional function as forms of physical self-harm can sometimes serve, right? Like it's this seeking out of a particular kind of pain and suffering because it offers some kind of psychological control or relief. And like it's something you see incels do. For example, incels engage in this, like alt-right people often engage in this. How to Radicalize a Normie by Dan Olson goes into it quite well, that a lot of the behavior patterns for especially incels and for like the really black-pilled alt-right kids on the internet is that they get stuck in these cycles of going to incel and alt-right and right-wing forums and getting loaded up with nothing but despondency and rage, right? Like nothing but misogyny, like women are bitches and like you will never have the skull caliper measured length, you'll never have the jawline to get laid, you're going to be alone, you're going to be miserable, no one's ever going to love you, you're never going to have sex, like all women are going to treat you like nothing but dirt, and like just loading up on all of that pain and misery over and over again because it's the only place that they feel like they have community, and then having nowhere to go with it, like nothing to do with it, no way to find relief or catharsis from it, and because they have nothing else, like they go back to it over and over and over again. They go back to it to have their worst fears reconfirmed back to them, right? And it's something I've seen described as a form of digital self-harm because it is harmful. Like it's something that drives people into really, really dark, despairing, horrible places, and causes real damage to them. But it's a compulsive behavior because, like, it's the only thing that scratches whatever itch they've got inside of them, because they don't have the capacity or the means to seek out, a better way to be. Which is not in the sense to saying, oh, you should feel pity or you should feel sad for alt-right or incels, like, or that you should give them leeway or whatever. Like, none of that. This is not the poor people. Like, they're responsible for their actions and they ought to feel the consequences of their behavior. Just to say that, that the reason why people get out into that shit is bad. And I feel something similar here with Blitz because, like, here Blitz he's just been through a really fucking emotionally rough time, and now he's looking at pictures of stuff that just reminds him how desperate he is not to be alone, right? He has he's just experienced intense rejection, and now here he goes, back to the source of the misery, right? Looking at, his employees, his friends, his daughter, the people he cares about, his broken former relationship, his childhood friend who he got estranged from, and then his mother, whose that thing on her neck is the thing that he wears on his suit usually. Right, he goes looking specifically for the things that will hurt him the most in this moment. perhaps in part, like, to make himself cry, like, to again, subconsciously, maybe it's to make himself cry. Like, maybe it's to hurt himself enough that he can finally let his feelings out. That might be a reason why someone does it. It's fucking bleak, man. And it's something I know from... Well, I won't name names, but other content creators, like, there are times... I should be careful what I say here. I don't want to say anything identifying. Okay. There's a creator I know who went through a rough time. Let's put it like that. I won't say why or what exactly. But they went through a rough time, and it got to them badly. And they ended up in a pattern of name-searching themselves online, specifically looking for people saying horrible things about them. And sometimes they would respond on an alt account, like argue with them, scream at them, like let some of their negative feelings out, but mostly, at least such as they described it to me, they just kept reading all the most horrible shit that people were saying about them over and over again. Because it felt like the only thing that was real. Because they were so miserable, they were so sad, they felt so awful in themselves that only that felt real to them. Only the horrible shit people were saying, because they weren't emotionally capable of having a good thought about themselves. They were stuck so deep in self-hate that only the negatives felt real, right? And so they went looking for people, like, ignoring all of the compliments, all of the good things, anyone saying anything nice. They just went looking for the worst shit for hours. Because that was the only thing that made them feel anything at that point. Like, looking at the nice stuff just makes them feel like... And I know this for myself. Like, when my mental health is bad, like, I can look at all the nice comments in the world. People can say the nicest things about my videos. It doesn't register. My brain does not absorb it at all. But when my mood is real low, when I'm feeling bad, the negative comments, oh, they register. Like, they ping my brain's emotional center. They make me feel things. And it's like, I understand that behavior. Like, I understand why it happens. Because, like, when you get real depressed, sometimes you just want to feel something. And if that's pain, it's better than the gray sludge of nothing. Because at least it reminds you that you're alive, right? That's kind of the character of what... At least to me, that's the character of what Blitz is doing here. Anyway, that ended up to being a second reaction to the whole fucking episode. It was supposed to be a recap. My point is, it is a very good time, this episode. It's a bad time. It's a sad time. It's a miserable time. It's a gleeful... Like, if you're a fucked up bastard, you get a sense of glee and anticipation and sort of, oh, they're gonna be so sad. Oh, they're gonna hurt each other emotionally. The iceberg is coming, motherfuckers. Like, you get a sort of gleeful, a gleeful fun out of it, because these are fictional characters. They do not have interiority and they cannot be hurt. And so you can sort of take joy in a twisted way in seeing it play out in fiction. That's the whole point of soap operas, right? Is that you have these people who go through, like, just the most horrible, miserable, emotional times. And and it's like, you can just sit there on your couch, like eating popcorn and be like, yeah, you fucking tell him, oh, you slept with your sister. Oh, I want to see where this goes, right? It's a very good time, this episode. I enjoy it very much. It didn't knock the feet out from under me. And I think it's partly because, like, after episode 6, what was gonna, right? Like, what was gonna make me go, holy shit, how the fuck did they do? Like, could that possibly, like... And it wasn't as ambitious with the animation medium as episode 6 was either. Like, it was just a very good time. It's just really good. It's just like, oh, yes, oh, emotional turmoil. Oh, a good song, actually, also. Ooh, like, it's that, right? Very much enjoyed episode 7. So, episode 8. I'm actually not sure. It's one of these two. It goes somewhere here. Oh shit! Now I can't take it back. Okay, just put it here for the moment, and then let's look through it again. You and I, let's just sit here. Let's look through it again. Let's see what's in there, and let's see if I can come to a more substantial conclusion. Because yeah, let's just. I was gonna say something more, but let's just look through it. Because episode 8 is like. It's the one that came out months later that was delayed because of, like, Kesha's shit-ass sexual assault. Allegedly. Rapist, allegedly. Piece of shit, definitely. Asshole garbage producer Dr. Luke, who I hope just steps on a Lego with every step he takes for the rest of his life. Really, that motherfucker just deserves the worst. And it's mostly about, like, Luna and her issues, right? Like, Luna's desperation for friendship and connection, and her complete inability, and boy, she really can't, her complete inability to actually feel at ease with the affection of other people, which, like, comes through very much in her interactions with Queen Bee, right? How easily she begins to feel rejected, and like, how easily she begins to feel thrown away, right? And how hard she finds it to communicate, like, in a way that works for other people, right? And for the most part, it's like I don't have that much to say on the recap, really. Because there isn't as much going on in this as there is, for example, in episode 7 or even episode 6. Like, it is a very simple story at the heart of it, which is Luna has a lot of trouble feeling like she fits in anywhere, like she has a home. And just, like, over the course of a party, she starts to find that. Like, she starts to find that she does feel like she fits in a little bit with the other Hellhounds, with Queen Bee. And then Blitz kind of sort of ruins it. I've articulated my criticisms of this episode already. I think that, like, I do feel like this episode kind of feels like it should be 2 episodes. That the first episode should be Luna going through the arc of, like, feeling like she doesn't belong here, like she doesn't have a chance here, like she can't fit in with these people. And then, like, eventually sort of finding her feet and being like, oh shit, actually, you know what? Maybe I can. Like, maybe I do, like, sort of finding her feet, starting to feel like she's getting a handle on her feelings, starting to feel like she's beginning to build, like, a little bit of social confidence. And then episode 2, Blitz crashes into the party. And that's when the conflict arises, where, like, Queen Bee asks her, like, hey, you need to take care of your dad, actually, and Luna doesn't take well to that, of course, like, because that's a really fucking unpleasant thing for any kid to have to do for their father. But, like, that Blitz sort of crashes into the party as, like, both someone who's trying to help, who's trying to be there in like, good faith and be there for his daughter, but who also, like, ends up ruining things a little bit unintentionally. And Luna having to deal with the emotional turmoil of that. That feels like that should be its own episode, and cramming together in one didn't quite work for me. Then there's the fucking... It's not even Kesha singing, but then there's fucking Kesha. And her musical number.
Hey, I'm what you need. I'm what you want. I got it all. A carnivore. I'll bring you up. I'll take you down. I'm sticky sweet. Stuck in your teeth like cotton candy. Cotton candy. Cotton candy.
And, like, her character animation is the thing, right? It's the thing that makes me feel like it's so fucking good. But the thing is, a lot of the rest of the episode is mostly just on that high level of base quality that the show, for the most part, at this point has, right? Like, I never had the same moment that I had in episode 2, where I just kind of went, where the fuck did this? Holy shit. Like, and like, this image, like, this shit. Like, it never took me off my feet like that. but the sheer level of quality, and the fact that it's Kesha, like, but I didn't give extra points to episode 5 for having Norman Reedus, so I really, it somewhere, like, it almost completely astonished me, the level of animation quality in the performance here.
But it's the truth. I'm not your lie. Let them eat cake, let them eat pie. Or better.
Right, the character animation on this fucking character is just so fucking good. Like, just such an incredible baseline of total competence. Especially in terms of, like, the performance of the character as well, like, outside of the song.
Party is buzzing now. Fuck. I feel like I went a little too hard with the confetti this time, though. I have, like, a rainbow in my vagina right now. Oh, hey!
Right, and poor Luna just doesn't know how to handle someone who's genuinely nice and extroverted, and just seems to enjoy her company and want her there. Which, I've been there, girl. I know. But just, like, the fucking, the interplay between, like, Kesha's voice performance as oh, I forgot to turn that back on so you could see what the fuck I was looking at. I'm so good at my job. I'm so good at this. I definitely understand why 20,000 of you subscribed. Like, just the management of her anatomy, like the management of, like, the multiple limbs she has, the wings, managing, like, the highly graphical, stylized aspects of her character design, turning that shit around in 3D space, and still communicating, like, a very specific personality to her. It's
So keep making me that motherfucking honey. Yeah, keep it coming.
just such a great performance that is captured by the animators here. Again, I've talked about it before, but fucking rotating things in 3D space is like, and I'm sure, like, I've seen like people, like, some people talking in comments about, like, how the animation was stupid, and, like, the animator being self-effacing and saying, oh no, we just used the tools that we had, and, like, it was a normal production process. And, like, I just want to tell you something. An animator being self-effacing about their work doesn't mean jack squat. Doesn't mean, like, you could fucking an animator who's just animated the most heart-wrenching, emotionally resonant, incredible performance on a character. You talk to them about it, it's like, yeah, you know, I mean, I feel like I had to sort of cut my corners a little bit. It wasn't that good. Like, some other, like, they will never fucking take a victory lap. Animators, they'll never take a victory lap. That's why I am here. That is what my fucking channel is about sometimes. That's why I do content about animation, is because, like, animators deserve to take a victory lap. And they won't, because they're fucking neurotic messes, all of them. And I need you all to know that this is an incredible feat of craft. This is really good craft. This is someone who knows what the fuck they're doing, and they're executing it with real, genuine, beautiful skill. And, like, And if you see an interview with those people going like, yeah, no, I think we did a reasonably good, of course, like, it's all down to, and I had my assistants, and like, yeah. But like, fucking take a victory lap, you motherfucker. You did an amazing job. Fuck you.
I feel like I went a little too hard with the confetti this time, though. I have, like, a rainbow in my vagina right now.
Like, because Kezia, as a voice performance, especially the way that she performs the character, it has a very particular energy, right? Like that sort of, that mixture of, like, ditzy and outgoing and cheerful and funny and, like, scatterbrained. That's a very particular energy, right? That Kesha brings to it. Which, like, presumably is also present in the script. And the animators are handling Queen Bee's performance of that character really well, because certainly at the start of the episode, I was unsure, is Queen Bee going to be the villain then, right? Is Beelzebub, who's apparently the lord of gluttony, not that that's ever spelled out anywhere in the show, like, is she gonna turn out to be like the villain or the antagonist of this? Since we opened with Mean Girls, is she going to be Queen Mean Girl of the party? Turns out, no, she's not, right? At all. And that, I think it would have been very, very easy for the way that she was animated to accidentally frame her behavior as manipulative, malicious, somehow like condescending.
Oh, hey, is this...
When in fact, like, we have this... Oh! like this, like, she's just kind of there, present in the moment for a second, and then it's like, oh, hey, new person! Hi, I want to talk to you! Right? Where, like, we're managing the gap between where that behavior just seems like Luna is clearly acting on it. Like, Luna is like, she must be making fun of me, right? Clearly, she must be, because that's what, like, I am bad in social situations, so people hate me and they don't want me around. So why is she being nice to me? She must be making fun of me. And they're doing such a good job of not ever really giving you anything in her body language, in her animation, in her performance to make you think that.
Cutie, where you been hiding, girl?
Is there something funny?
Nah, I'm just really high on all this tasty energy right now. Tex says you don't get invited out much. I hope this itty-bitty get-together can serve as a fun first time.
Right? Not a like, there's no sense of malice, right? Like, she says something that the line itself could so easily be read, and that's also, like, credit to Kesha for the voice performance, could so easily be read condescendingly, but there, it's just like, oh no, she seems to completely fucking mean it. Like, there's not a hint of condescension in her body language.
I would have thrown a bigger one, but I couldn't convince Belphegor to let me break into her stash of party drugs. So fucking lame. I mean, I usually just steal them, but Belle changed the locks. She says I'm a total jackass for trying, but hey, I'm proud to be a total jackass.
Anyway, yeah, B, this is Luna. And Luna, this is my girlfriend, B.
Nice to...
Also, Tex, how the fuck did you bag an actual, like, embodiment of sin? How the hell did you do that? I mean, I guess look at you, but still.
To meet ya, bitch.
Oh, this is... She's hot.
Holy shit. Okay, Tex, you didn't tell me she was hilarious. That's so funny.
Right.
I love that that's the first thing you say to me. You don't give a shit how freaky you come off, and that's fucking beautiful. You are my new favorite person.
It's like, I wouldn't know how to handle a person. I have been in situations in the past where people have been really nice and friendly and extroverted and personable with me, and I'm like, I don't really know how to deal with you. Like, I've learned, like, I've become better at it, but it is a thing of, like, when you meet someone who's just, like, nice and interested in you, who just, like, wants to hang around with you because they like people fundamentally, it is a little bit like, what the fuck are you trying to sell me? Like, you're gonna come out with the fucking crypto pitch in 2 seconds. You're gonna try and get me to buy into Amway. Like, something must be up here, because otherwise, why would you be this way? They are difficult to deal with, those people, but sometimes you just have to accept that people are nice occasionally. It's weird. I don't like it.
Am I though?
Yeah, bitch. No, really. reminds me of the.
Again, like, I'm genuinely, like, it's a difficult thing to capture in the performance that she should be both, like, extroverted and, like, performative, and, like, clearly, like, she's acting out her emotions louder because she just feels happy and confident in herself. And you can see, like, she does that, yes, of course I like you, and sees Faluna's reaction, like, no, come on, seriously, I mean it, right? That is a difficult thing to capture in performance. And, like, her absent-mindedness, the ditziness, the ADHD energy that I'm recognizing almost immediately. It's a great performance. It really is. Yeah. You know what? Like, because it is... The more I think about the performance, the more I think about the difficulty of animating a character like this, like, not just on a technical perspective, but from an acting perspective, of holding that performance together without ever letting her become an antagonist, right? Even when there's a confrontation, right? When Blitz sort of shows up and wrecks house a little bit. Even when there's a confrontation and she has to, like, go loud, that, like, the sense I get is, like, not really that she wants to fight at all, but that she's setting a boundary, right? Like, that she's like, that's too far. It's nice. And it's also, like, for this particular kind of nerd media, right? The shit that appeals to the theater kids, the weirdos, the emos, like the goths, the like the queer kids. There is a tendency in there to act out a kind of power fantasy of, like, getting revenge on the beautiful people, right? Getting revenge on the jocks, the normal folk, like the popular kids, the mean girls, right? There is a tendency there, like, where those people, like, that kind of person is just cast de facto as a villain, right? If you're popular, if you're cool, if you're good looking, then you're just evil, right? Like, then you are just the bad guy, and you are an antagonist, and you are someone who's gonna go out of their way to bully our protagonist because of that's just the way it is. And that's something that comes out of a very real place, right? Like the social dynamics of you know, teenage life are brutal and uncompromising and bad. It comes out of a real place, but it's an urge that I'm glad to see this show resisting. Right? That it doesn't just say, oh, Queen Bee, she's the queen bitch of the mean girls, right? And she, like, has managed to charm Tex, and that's not fair because he would be much better with Luna, right? Like, it sort of indulging in that, like, outsider girl fantasy. And it doesn't do that. Like, it presents her very explicitly as someone who is just a perfectly nice person. And the reason why Luna, in this moment, feels so angry and rejected is because she just felt like she was starting to fit in at the party, right? Like, she just felt like she was making some social headway. She just felt like she was getting somewhere. She just started to feel like maybe this party is somewhere where she could feel at home, right? And then they throw this on her, right? Which, from her perspective, must have felt like an excuse to get rid of her, right? You have to go take care of your dad. It's my fucking dad. He should take care of himself. He should, by the way. Right? Like, it's not fair at all to Luna that she gets saddled with this, but it's also, he's your family. It's kind of intractable, right? And it's, the animation and the way that it's written makes it so clear, right, that Tex doesn't like to be doing this. Queen Bee doesn't like to be doing this. But it's like, no, that you kind of have to. Like, it's your dad. Like, you're the person who's his family here, right? Where they're trying to do right by both of them, right? So that they're not just trying to get rid of her. But to Luna, that's what it feels like, right? Like, this feels like making up an excuse to throw her out, to push her away. And she gets angry. Because of course she does. Like, what the fuck else does she have? And it's like, it's nice that this episode resisted the urge to just simply make her evil. Like, just simply make her like the high school bully. Because that's more emotionally complex, right? That's a lot more emotionally complex for Luna to deal with than just someone who's a villain being a villain at her. When it's, no, this is a nice person who's actually trying to do the right thing for you by letting you know that your dad needs your help, right? That's harder to deal with. When you can't just cast yourself as the put-upon hero, being bullied by everyone else, but you are in fact a victim of circumstance, right? She doesn't know that what her dad has just been through, right? Yeah. I do hope season 2 kind of follows up on that a little bit. Like, the fact that Blitz is at this point so fucked up and is so unable to like really pace himself and handle himself that he needs his daughter to clean up his mess like that and take care of him like that. That really should be, I feel, a thing that gets followed up on, right? Like a part of their emotional relationship going forward, like the way that Blitz maybe does need to learn to get to a point where he doesn't do this to her, right? And again, it's that thing, the same thing as the previous episode. We understand why Blitz is like this right now. We've seen what the poor boy went through, right? Like, it's, yeah, no, like, nobody makes great decisions when they're in that frame of mind. Nobody does. Of course not. And when someone who's so fucking, like, miserable and sad gets confronted with an opportunity to drink as much as humanly possible and be applauded for it, it's like, yeah, no, of course that doesn't end up in a good place. Of course that turns out bad. Right? Like, not in that he shouldn't do better, but in the sense of, like, yeah, no, that's an understandable, very human failing to have. It's not that there's a villain here, right? It's that they are victims of bad circumstances. And, like, problems that compound. And then the vomit gag at the end. Very good. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it goes in the, like, it's not as astonishing as episode 2 was the first time I saw it, as episode 6 was. It's not as astonishing, but, like, the performance, like, sitting here rewatching it, I can't get over just what a good piece of fucking craft that is. Like, it has astonished me now, right? Because it is such a good fucking piece of craft. It's such a good character performance. It kind of has to go there, doesn't it? Yeah. That was season 1. It started with a pretty bad pilot. Like, again, context dependent. A pilot that would have been a great episode of a 2010s web series of animation that I would have loved when I was a teenager, but not very good as, like, as a part of the Helluva Boss series. And then it slowly starts, like, then it like, oh, okay, like, then it sort of develops into, okay, this is something that's a much more competent and, like, well put together version of that. Okay, cool, that's great. And then it swerves. Then it just, like, takes a hard left at Fuck You Valley, with apocalyptic fucking lullabies and broken marriages and, like, fathers trying to reconnect to their estranged children, which, by the way, a bit of a thing in, right? And then it sort of goes back to, okay, this is more like episodic, sort of, they're killing a bunch of people, comedy fun time. It's like, and then, oh, no, this is bad. Like, that's the pilot again. Oh, no, I don't like that very much. And then it's like, oh, that's a horny snake. Why is he so well animated? What the fuck? Oh, Jesus. Oh, that's a cool fight scene. Holy shit. And then we get to 6 was like, oh, that's kind of a weak setup. I don't really care for these villains. Hey, why is the room filling with gas? Holy shit, what's happening? What in the fuck? Holy, oh, that's how he feels. Jesus, holy shit. Oh, that's why. So that's why he feels that way about, oh, okay, I see. And then Stola shows up and it's like, Jesus, man. Holy shit. My guy, that was terrifying. Oh, romantic intimacy. No romantic intimacy. I get what's going on here. I see the dynamic between you now. And then it's episode 7, which is just like, settle in, popcorn. Here comes the iceberg. I see it 7 miles ahead. Now let's see how they steer the ship right the straight the fuck in. Oh, these people are going to hurt each other so bad. Ooh, that's a really good song. Hey, it's Fizz again. Right? It's like, that's just a good time. And then at the end, it's like, let's just take a victory lap. Let's just have an incredibly compelling single character performance carry the entire fucking episode on its back. And also, holy shit, it's Kesha. Yeah, like, it starts not great. It's fine. Like, it's fine. It's like, holy shit, it's okay. It's like, oh, that's actually not very good. Oh, whoa, this is a good time. This is a great time, actually. Holy fucking shit. Okay, like, this is a good time. This is a great time. And then, like, Jesus, how did they do that with her? That's my review of Helluva Boss Season 1, I think. Yeah, that's pretty much where it is. So, Season 2, then. I'm not gonna do it yet. It'll probably be a little while. Primarily because I have other responsibilities. I have my regular work that I do, which I have fallen behind on. In part because of this channel. Like, this channel has been very good for me as a place to sort of relax and pull myself out of things that could spiral into burnout and just make videos, record videos about whatever the fuck I want. But it's also like I do have to do my regular work as well. There are videos on my main channel that I'm falling behind on. I am working maybe with a sponsor over on the main channel, which means I'm going to have some hard deadlines on some videos that I need to make over there, which means I need to pull my face out of my hyperfixation with, like, whatever and focus on that. And I need to keep my shorts channel going as well. And I also manage the fucking Discord community server. By the way, there's going to be a join link for the Discord in the comments. Yeah, the comments below the video. It's going to be the pinned comment. It's going to work for 24 hours, I think, after I put it up. If you want to join the Discord, we're going to have movie nights over there. And I think probably going to watch some of Helluva Boss sort of on the Discord server, the same way that I did with the finale of Has Been Hotel. I'm probably going to do some watch-alongs with people where I do my reaction while there's people sort of in a Discord server sort of reacting along with me. We do movie nights over there, and I want to watch Cats, actually. Not because of the reference in episode 4, but because I've been watching some video essays recently about the shit-ass, terrible, wonderful, horrible train wreck of a magnificent disaster that was the Tom Hooper movie. So I kind of want to watch the 1998 pro shot of it as like a movie night thing. So we're going to be doing that. So if you want to join up for that, you can do that. And we'll be doing more of movie nights going forward. Like, there's a bunch of movies that I've just never really found occasion to watch that I want to catch up on. Might want to watch some classic movies as well, some old shit. I haven't watched Citizen Kane in a long time, for example. I haven't watched maybe some Shakespeare. Yeah, anyway, that. So you can go over there, join that. There's a Helluva Boss discussion room in there where they talk a lot about the show and post a whole fuck ton of fan art of the characters. Do that if you want to. But yeah, Season 2, give it a minute. Please don't hound me about it. Please don't leave a bunch of comments like, where is it? I want it. Like, I appreciate your interest. I appreciate that people are curious and that, like, this has been something that they look forward to. I'm very happy about that. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. But also, I need to do my regular work. And the more that people sort of yell at me, like, where's Helluva Boss? Where's Helluva Boss? Like, the more that people sort of post that in my comments around places, it just stresses me out. It just makes me it just makes it feel not like something I'm looking forward to doing for fun, but it makes it feel like a bit of a chore that people are expecting me to do for them. And that's not, I don't want to engage with the show that way. This channel is always going to be last on my priority list. It has to be, because it's not the channel that pays my bills. So, you know, if it gets to 100,000 subscribers and all of a sudden there's ad money rolling in, maybe things can change, but I have to prioritize this last. That's just the way it is, the way that my job works. So yeah. Don't post spoilers in the comments, please. I'll get to Helluva Boss Season 2 when I have time. And yeah, I think that's it. Right. You can join Patreon if you want to. You can use coffee to send me a tip if you want to. You don't have to. And it's not going to make me do Helluva Boss faster, by the way. Like, that's not... This is if you want to tip me because you enjoy the stuff that I do. You don't have to either, by the way. Absolutely not. Especially not. Like, if you need that money for pizza, use it on pizza. If you want to maybe give some of that money to Doctors Without Borders or the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund, do that instead, please. That's a better place to put your money right now. Okay. Do I have anything else that I need to say? No. I like Helluva Boss a lot. It's an astonishing show in a lot of ways. Not all the time, but often enough. And even when it's not astonishing, at least it's rarely worse than just being a decent, alright time. Yeah, that's a conclusion. Bye!